Started here.
Good to go.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the work session for the Webster Grove City Council meeting of September 6th. Holy cow, it's September. And we are going to start with some board and commission interviews. Do we know if Dottie is joining us via Zoom or in person?
She's supposed to be in person.
Okay.
Maybe we can move on.
We'll
to
start
Philip.
with Philip.
Yes.
Philip, if you would like to come on forward to the microphone, this is going to be really painless. All we're going to do is ask you to explain to us a little bit about why you wanted to join the commission and what you think you'll bring to it. And I would just like to say it's nice to see you in person. I know we've talked on the phone a couple of times.
Yeah, it's
So
nice
please.
to be here in person. You know, not many people in person, but that's
Yes.
still okay. Yeah, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to hopefully participate. And yeah, so you just wanted me to get started?
Yeah, please go right ahead. Just a little bit about
Uh,
yourself and why you're interested in this job.
Okay, well, I think first and foremost is service and getting involved. And I think that's something that's always been passionate, that I've always been passionate about since college, high school, post-college, getting involved in communities, organizations, with teams, within my school, within my church. And I really like collaborating with people. And I think it's always been depending on when I have the time. And for a lot of my life, I haven't had much time to do that in my kind of career stage in my life. I was working for 10 years in Chicago, hustle bustle right downtown. And then about four years ago, moved to the greater St. Louis area. And for almost 3 years now, I've been in Webster Groves, and we have 2 children. I stay at home almost full time with them now. And so my perspective on, you know, everything in life has changed, and their safety and, you know, the safety of our community and things like that have become of the utmost importance to me. And I think that goes without saying, you know, or else we all wouldn't be here. But in that time, I've just noticed that there are a number of things that are just so different from not only Illinois to Missouri, but Chicago to St. Louis to all the different municipalities that I've been to. I've had the opportunity to travel extensively, and I really enjoy cycling, walking, getting outdoors, being active. And so I'm always, you know, enjoying any number of the parks with my kids on a given day. And my wife has a schedule of 7 days on and 7 days off. And so for 7 days, it's me and the kids, and we are as active in the city as anybody that you might imagine. So with that also comes an awareness for, you know, some of the great things that we have going for us in Webster as far as traffic and safety and parks and recreation and everything like that. And then there are other things that I noticed that, you know, maybe we could get better, maybe we could improve upon. And so that's something that I would be hoping to do and to help with. And I do have the time now because I'm at home almost all the time. And yeah, I just love to get involved because I think, you know, at a time when it's really hard to get people to show up for a paid position, or really anything in general, I'm willing to, you know, show up, be consistent, work together, try to do it for the betterment of the community and my family and everyone. And yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you. Council members, do we have questions at all for Philip?
Philip, have you had a chance to, this is for the charter review, right?
No, this is for the traffic advisory.
Oh, God, I'm so glad that you're applying for the traffic advice. The liaison.
I dare you to ask him a charter review question just to see how he does it.
Yeah. See, listen. So I apologize. Well,
Good.
is there anything like, you know, one thing that we have a really good group that's been
Cool.
dormant for a long time. And so is there anything in particular that you look around the traffic or anything pedestrian, biking that you think, hey, Webster should or should not do that interests you?
To pull that closer to you.
Well, I think one of the greatest things is for as much as the biking culture in St. Louis is very strong, and the things like the bike lane on Lockwood are, although have had some mixed reviews, are a tremendous step in the direction of where things need to be going. But I think for me, it's kind of an awareness thing. It's just as much as physical changes that can be made to the flow or to stuff like, signs, crosswalks, maybe an integration of the fact that with federal funding that's incorporating school security, there could be things that touch on boundaries of areas that are, Elm and Glendale, in front of any number of schools, that not only raise public awareness for crosswalks by having people physically present, but also maybe they can be paid for in a way that, I don't know, is creative and connected to security. But really it's the awareness of drivers who really, I don't even think understand that, let's say cyclists can be in the road, or that if you see white stripes on a crosswalk and somebody's standing there, even though you may be able to hit it and go a little bit faster and get there past them, really by law, you should stop. You should let them, feel the safety and understanding that I feel sometimes here, like I want to live here. I'd be happy staying here for as long as we can. But one thing I find surprising is that sometimes pedestrians, children, that whole sort of culture of kids in the street that I grew up with, kids in a cul-de-sac, kids playing, is kind of very secondary to the concerns of let's get people to where they need to go, even from a standpoint of speed limits. It's something for me where I'm from Springfield, Illinois originally, but I spent 10 years in Chicago, in our state capital, and we've got incredible parks, but also speed limits are shockingly different. And I know that's nothing, that's going to be changed overnight, but that's something that along with that, if you're already going 10 or 15 miles per hour faster at a baseline, and then you're not looking out for, pedestrians. So sorry, that was kind of a long.
No, that was great.
Okay.
But
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Philip, like I said, I think that this commission is kind of in its infancy. It's starting and it's rebuilding, and they're doing an excellent job. They really are. And they're looking at some really difficult and some needed issues.
Mhm.
But one thing that I think you could bring to this is looking at what other municipalities are doing and how to collaborate with them, because you brought up the awareness part. It's like you can do as much as you want with traffic sometimes. And unfortunately, drivers are going to be drivers. Question is, how can we say, hey, this imaginary line of Webster Grove, Shrewsbury, Crestwood, everything in between doesn't end there, and that drivers are going to come and we're going to go over there. And so the question is, how can you get everyone on the same page in St. Louis County, St. Louis City?
Mhm.
I think that's going to take a lot of work. And I know that's a big ask of any commission, much less city council, but I just think that you'd be an excellent fit for what this commission is looking to do and what they intend to do.
Thanks.
Anybody else with questions? All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And
Thank
we
you,
will be
guys.
in touch soon, and we appreciate you stepping forward.
Oh, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you.
Still no Dottie, so I think we'll keep going and maybe a circle.
Call her and text it or. no worries.
Okay, well, we'll get back to her maybe after the Charter Review Advisory Board. I do see that David Yates is in the audience. David, come on forward. What we'll ask for the Charter Review Advisory Board candidates is if you just, spend about a minute, less 30 seconds even maybe, to tell us about yourself and why you've applied, and then we'll ask you a few questions. I know you've been in the audience, you know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Hi,
please.
Dave Yates. Hi, all. So I've been a resident of Webster for 35 of my close to 50 years of living, and after a brief stint in the city, but I've been here 10 years, the latest, really on Oak Street. I'm an architect in the city, which I've also applied for ARB, but if I do get this position here, I'll just push that a year or two or however long that's going to take. I first became interested in this just because based on the Douglas Hill development, my neighbors, other citizens got activated by at first the this is going to be awesome stage of things, and then as it progressed, we became more put off by the development, and it just my civic mindedness became awakened, I guess. Just to, do something back to my community that I've been living here for more than half my life. Also, just with the charter review meeting that you explained the charter, just it was fascinating, the history of the charter, and how it's come. I think most of it's, I think a lot of the problems with it have been addressed over the years. So with the pool and the school districts and all that. So I mean, or where you could go to the pool, if what color you were, or where you lived, whatever. So yeah, that's basically it. So
Great, thank you. Emerson, so I don't forget you out here on Zoom, would you like to begin our questioning?
You're on mute, Emerson. You're on mute, Emerson. Still on mute.
Oh, there we go.
I got a new laptop here. It's beating me with the technology. David, thank you for being here tonight. I have a question for you to start off the question period. What specific core values will you bring with you during this process?
First of all, I'm respectful of people's time, and don't try to overtalk them. Listen, I listen to them. I'm a good listener, which I guess would be a second core value. I am, and the third, I'd say would be honesty. I'm not going to lay into somebody because I disagree with them, but I will be honest with my opinion about their opinion versus my opinion, and not be untruthful.
Sarah, would you like to go?
Okay.
Oh, Emerson, I'm sorry, did you?
No, I just
Okay.
said thank you.
Okay,
I'd like to echo the thanks to seeing you on this list. I was happy to see you put in for this. Could you tell us a little bit about your typical approach when working on a team?
I'm an architect, and every day does not go by where I don't have to be a team player and collaborate with a wide range of people, owners, contractors, developers, my engineers, my co-designers, my co-architects. And it's a continual, I mean, I'm probably communicating on Teams all day, probably hundreds and hundreds of back and forth between everybody. So it's just it's in my nature to be collaborative.
Great, thank you.
Have you identified in your own mind issues in the charter or items in the charter you would like to see addressed?
I read through it twice. The first time when this process began, and I just was more recently. I haven't seen anything that's like egregious that would really need to be addressed immediately. But what I'm interested in seeing is what's not in it. What's been excised over the years, what is with being me attending the prior to interview meetings, I've seen other people's take on the charter and some have agendas that that seem to me apparent, and I'm not coming with one. I don't see myself saying that's gonna let's scrap the whole thing or let's change the setup. But is there improvement? Most probably. And that's why we're here to look through it.
David, thanks so much for being here and for applying. You said that you applied for the ARB as well. Do you have a preference on which one you would rather participate in?
I think the ARB will always be there, and there's always a need for more architects. Actually, I mean, so I would say I prefer this one at this time. And I could talk about other commissions as well, just about, one, I don't know if this is germane to what we're talking about right now, but the fact that the ARB is the only commission that requires, that has a predetermined set of I have to be a licensed architect. But other commissions don't have a professional criteria that could be helpful.
Mhm.
You know, plan commission, having urban planners or other architects, or, you know, maybe having a traffic person on the traffic, you know, board, you know, so just an observation that I made, so.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Karen?
Hi, David. Thank you for applying.
Karen, will you pull your microphone down? Thank you.
Okay. Do you have an idea, or what do you think the commission should look like in terms of participants?
Diversity of thoughts. So don't stack it with people who all think one way or another. I know it's hard to say what, by looking at the 30 or so applicants that have come forward, we haven't really played all of our deck of, you know, how I think of it. If it's conservative, liberal, pro-government, you know, less government, more government, you know, what it is, but I think a well-balanced, so that we can actually have real frank discussions to each other about what the charter needs to be paid, you know, what needs to be paid attention to.
Hey, Dave.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and any training you might have had, and if you're open for more?
My office is a global firm of about 2,000 people, and so we always have a wide range of people of ethnicity, sexuality, social status, whatnot, and we go through annual training. You know, it's not long training, but it's a you know, online coursework, and then I also belong on the diversity action committee at my office. We meet not too regularly, but we meet and discuss, and we have affinity groups for persons of color, and for women, and gender orientation and whatnot. So I feel I'm well-rounded, and I think the question asked of other candidates was, you know, would you be up to further training, and most definitely. I could always use more. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'm going to just give you a chance again. If there's anything we haven't asked you or that you would like to highlight before we run out of time here, please do so now.
I'm trying to think of any of the questions that weren't asked. I think I'd be a good candidate for this, or I am a good candidate for this. And I'm really eager to give back to Webster, just having been here most of my life, and hoping to continue to be here for a while, because my kiddos are 9 and 12, and they still got time here. So, and
Good. Did you have something else?
I
Pam?
just had a quick question. You are quite visible. You come to a lot of meetings and things. And so this question kind of just reiterates my thoughts, but I wanted to know, given the demands of your profession and the type of firm where you work, do you have any problems with the time commitment?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The pandemic has informed me that I need to respect my time at the office, away from the office, and not, you know, architects we beat ourselves up, and, you know, we work 50, 60 weeks, but during the pandemic, I've said, you know, I'm going to get my stuff done in the 40-hour work week, and really be mindful of my time, so that I can dedicate it to family and sleep, and these other extracurricular activities.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you putting yourself forward and applying, and we'll make some decisions soon.
Great.
So thanks,
Thanks.
David.
Thanks.
Thank
Dave.
you.
All right, we're going to put Charter Review Advisory Board to the side for just a second, David. So we're switching now to Arts Commission. And Dottie Inglis, I believe, is here with us. And Dottie, you're not going to get quite the script. Please come on forward. Sorry about that. You're not going to get quite the number of questions here. Boards and commissions, we simply ask you to tell us a little bit about why you applied and what you might bring to the commission, and in this case, obviously, the Arts Commission. And thank you, by the way, for the application.
Oh, no, I'm recently retired from Webster University, where I was the chair of the department of, originally the Department of Theater and Dance, the Conservatory of Theater Arts. And I've basically felt like I've lived in Webster for 43 years. Well, although I only moved into a house in Webster 25 years ago, because it's kind of Webster's been my life really in terms of my working environment. To that end, due to my job, basically, I really didn't have a lot of free time to give back to a city that has really nourished the art forms that I've been involved in for my entire career. And this just seemed like a good timing for me to have an opportunity to give back to the city and to provide maybe a different perspective from someone who's been a tenant, if you will, of the city that we live and work in. And having been run a department, I'm collaborative. Theater is collaborative by its very nature. Hearing diverse points of view I was really taken by what you said earlier about that we all don't need to agree to be able to work together. I think we need to come to decisions and agree on decisions at a point. But I do think that the more ideas we have, the better we are. And I'm looking forward to taking what I've learned about the arts and maybe having a different application for it from what I've done thus far.
Great, thank you. Any members of council have questions? Well, I was at the Arts Commission meeting this morning and they heard about you and your experience and are dying to have you join them. So, so I think this might be pretty easy, but we have to do the formal process. So thank you very much.
And I'm grateful that you're doing a formal process, actually. No, because it really did make me think.
Yeah.
You know, to have a real kind of, okay, why do you want to do this,
Yeah.
Dottie? And
Yeah.
and this is why. And so thank you for your welcoming atmosphere, I must say.
Well, good. We're glad you feel welcome. Come back anytime.
Maybe I'll see you more often.
There we go. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right. So now we're going to go back to the Charter Review Advisory Board and see if we can get ourselves moving there. And Michael Yoakley is next. Michael, I'm not sure that you were here at the very beginning for the first one, and this will apply to Nicole Chaput, who's next as well. We're going to ask you just to give, 30 seconds or so introduction of yourself, why you want to be on the Advisory Review Board and Charter Review, yeah, whatever. I still haven't gotten that right. And then we'll ask you some questions. I know you received the questions in advance, so the floor is yours.
Okay, good. Okay, good afternoon or good evening, I should say. I've been a Webster resident here for about 56 years here. So I can say I'm very familiar with this area. And the reason why I applied, I wanted to be a little bit more actively involved at this stage in my life. I'm an empty nester now, so I have a little bit more time. I'm an employee of Thermo Fisher Pharmaceutical. So I have a little bit more time. Although this is a new arena for me, I have to openly admit, but this is a beginning. So everything takes a start there. And thank you for the opportunity.
That's great. So we're going to just ask a few questions. Emily, would you like to start this time?
Sure, I can start with that. Can you talk about maybe some core values that you would bring to the process?
Sure. I believe in honesty and integrity and trustworthiness and just being honest with one another, whether you disagree or agree. Being upfront is something I treasure. Punctuality is something. So when we're committed to something, I ask that, hey, you be there, I be there. And if I make a commitment to do that, that's something that never can fail you. And on my job, I'm over 10 people, and that's something that I instill: integrity, trust, and honesty.
Thank you.
Karen?
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Great to see you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for applying. Can you tell us what would you bring to the commission? What skills or your job skills or work skills do you have that you think would be transferable to work with the commission?
Like I said, I have not been in this arena before, but I have over 30 years of management skills. I was an employee with Millipore Sigma for 28 years. I'm now with Thermo. And in that, I've been a leader both in committees, boards, and on the manufacturing side of things. I think I can bring that. I have a listening ear. Sometimes you just have to listen when you're in a team atmosphere and take in everybody's opinion and then soak it in and then come to a common agreement. Sometimes it can take a little time, but sometimes that's the best way to do is to discuss it. What I bring is just a listening ear and open ear. And the one thing that I like to pride myself on is being able to talk to one another, whether it be one-on-one or in a team atmosphere. I was an athlete, so I understand the importance of being in a team, but also working individually. One-on-one, you could come together if you disagree with one another. If you discuss it one-on-one, maybe you can find some commonality there. And then maybe you could work through those difficulties.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for being here and for applying. It's always great to see new faces. So we appreciate the opportunity for your application. One thing I just want to know, you've been here for a long time here in Webster Groves. What have been some of the, in your time here, what do you think have been some positive changes in Webster Groves and what have been some negative or less positive changes in Webster Groves?
I'll address the positive first. Okay. Positive, I see slow growth, inclusion, diversity. Can't say that in my younger years that was existent, but I see Webster growing in that area. The area business-wise, I see it slowly growing in that area as well. So that means they're open to new ideas, progressive. That wasn't the case in my youthful years, but I still see that home feeling here, and I love that, and that's why I've never moved away.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He's very diplomatic because he didn't go to the negative, but we're going to let you. Let him go.
Years of experience.
Have you considered, or how would you say that the Charter Review Advisory Board can recommend changes that support the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts?
What little I have read and come to know, I think that we just kind of assist the council with good ideals, bad ideals, and we can come together as a group, and hopefully the council can take those ideals and make Webster a better place, better than what it currently is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit about what types of qualifications or backgrounds you're hoping to see from other members on the Charter Review Advisory Board?
Being that I don't have any experience, that's kind of hypocritical, but I would just say inclusion and diversity. I think that's very important. I don't see a lot of African Americans here, but I think that you guys welcome us as well. And I think that's something that I would emphasize, that we continue to try to go outside our boundaries here in Webster Groves and try to make everybody feel like they're part of the decision-making here.
Thank you.
Emerson, when you're ready.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here, Mike. My question is, you said you mentioned you have read some of the charter. Was there anything glaring to you that needed immediate attention?
I'll be honest with you, out of the 55 pages, no, not right offhand. I'm sure when we do a deep dive, I'm sure there may be things that come up, but I didn't see anything that stuck out to me in a glaring fashion. I guess that's why you guys emphasize time.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
So, Michael, thank you for being here. I'm going to also offer you the opportunity, if there's anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to raise in our few minutes that we have, please do so.
No, I would just say, I think this is a great opportunity for anyone to take advantage of. And just like this young man said here, I think that I would really enjoy the opportunity to be part of this.
Well, great. Thank you very much for applying, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list is Morgan Antistel, and if I am anywhere close, that would be great. If not, please correct me when you arrive up here at the microphone. And what we'll ask you to do, Morgan, is just take a minute or two, not a minute or two, we don't have that much time, 1 minute or less to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you applied, and then we'll ask some questions of you. So please, welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm Morgan in Tisdale. I applied because, well, I'm a member of the community. I live here in Webster. I work here in Webster at Maypop. I'm a student at the university down the street. And I just think it's really important for younger people in the community to take part in local government. I think that, getting people my age and around my age to engage in local government really helps to understand like the policy and the actual structural things going on within the city that you usually aren't aware of in my age group. So, yeah.
Well, great. We're now going to start with those questions. Emerson, would you like to begin this round? You're on mute.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mayor. Megan, Morgan, thank you for being here. Have you had the opportunity to review the current charter?
I have indeed.
Yeah. Can you tell me, are there any current issues that stand out to you that need addressing?
Yes. So, yeah, I wrote a couple things down. So at Webster, I study international human rights. That's my major, and I'm a senior there. And I was reading through it, and I noticed in a few sections, I think that there overall could just be an update of language used, less gendered language, less offensive language. Like, for example, in section 15 or section 5.8, specific purposes for hospitals, insane asylums, orphan asylums, poorhouses, industrial schools, jails, workhouses, and other charitable corrective penile institutions. I think that could use some updating. So there's a few different things. There's a few different things throughout that I think could be changed. And I also just had a few questions regarding a few sections, just like, could things potentially be turned online? I'm not sure. I would need to talk with other folks about that to go further into it. But yeah, for now, I think mostly the language is what needs to change.
I think you've been peeping over my shoulder.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you.
Can you, first, thanks for being here. Can you speak a little bit about your typical approach to working on a team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I pretty naturally go towards a leadership role in group settings, but I really have no problem taking a step back and following direction. I'm a pretty flexible thinker, and I'd like to think of myself as someone that can work in a multitude of ways and with a multitude of people. So that's, yeah, usually like inclusion and care is what I would bring into these situations.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you, good to see you. Thank you for applying. Can you describe your experience of working on other boards or similar bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am only 22 years old, so I haven't had a ton of experience, but I was on the board of this internship I did last year for my degree with a community garden here in St. Louis. And that, opened my eyes a lot to like the decision-making processes that go into those kind of positions. Also, I have been the president of many clubs throughout high school and college. And also I was a member of the Missouri College Democrats on Webster's campus, which we went around the state frequently to get college students registered to vote and just, try to get more in contact so people know what's going on in local and state government.
Great, thanks. David?
Morgan, thanks so much for being here and for applying. As a member of a different generation, I'm interested in one, what do you think, if you were a member of this commission, how you can incorporate or collect the ideas and opinions and input of people in your own generation because this is a living document and it's obviously going to outlive more than likely me at least. And so question is, how do you make it so it lasts for an extended period of time and ensures that the next generation is protected by it?
Yeah, Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. I think that it starts with getting more people my age, of my generation, hearing our input, advocating for what we find important and what we want to see change in this community, because it's a wonderful community. I love being a part of Webster. I think that, I have a lot of direct connection with the community as being part of the university here. And I also, like I said, I work at Maypop, which is, a lot of young folks like to frequent there. So I'm constantly chatting with people about, local government and state government. So I think that I would be an asset to this position because I am pretty in contact with, the youth.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Morgan.
totally.
And what type of makeup of participants would you like to see on the advisory board?
Yeah, I think that folks of all walks of life it would benefit the board to be a part of this, like people that just have their high school diploma, people with PhDs, people with, advanced knowledge in local and state government, youth, elders, like people of different races and classes and social statuses. I think that'd be really important to get a more roundabout view of what this community really is and how to best represent it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Is that all?
I've got one.
No,
Sorry.
not yet. So close, but not yet.
Can you talk a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, like any training that you've done, and if you would be open to more training
Yeah.
with the group?
Absolutely. So like I said, I'm studying international human rights at Webster. So I haven't specifically done a training of this nature, but I absolutely would be willing to. But in my studies, this is kind of what I deal with on a daily basis. I'm constantly taking classes in the humanities. So I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what I strive for in my own personal life. And that's what I'm going to try to do with my professional life following university. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
So Morgan, that leads me right in, and I promise I'm going to give you the opportunity to bring some things up too, but I do have one question for you. You talked about professional career. The requirements for the Charter Commission are that you live in Webster and be a registered voter in Webster while you're on there.
Yes.
You're going to graduate. I don't necessarily need you to predict the future, but do you think that we're going to last over the year or so in Webster that we might be working on this commission?
I do believe so. I know that for sure until May, but I do believe I'll be here all the way through next summer. And if not, I would be more than I apologize, more than happy to find a replacement if that's an option available.
So we won't leave that to you, but I appreciate you being honest about that. And I know the future is hard to predict.
Yeah.
But I will now give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't talked about in terms of us understanding your wanting to be on this commission?
I feel like we've touched on everything
Okay.
I wanted to bring up. I appreciate your time and hearing me out, and I hope to be a member of this, a part of this.
Well, great. Thanks for being here, Morgan. We appreciate it and always appreciate Webster U students who are willing to insert themselves further into the community. So thank you for that.
Morgan, do you have any idea what you want to do with your degree?
Are you studying?
But the reason I ask is because
You've never had college kids yet.
the reason I ask is because we have another member that applied whose daughter works at The Hague,
Oh,
and maybe we could put you in contact.
that's too funny. I was actually just in the Netherlands last semester studying
Oh,
abroad.
look at that.
Yeah,
You
that's
have your
too funny.
connections.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, David, that was good. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to judge you.
That's really sweet though. That's cool. Yeah, after school, I'm actually looking into woodworking programs. I'm also a woodworker. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. But I think this would be great also
Well.
to, I would love to get into local government as well. So we'll see what happens.
Good.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you
Yeah,
very
thanks so
much.
much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
You too. All right, Nicole Chaput, you are next on our list of contestants for the Charter Review Advisory Board. Yeah, come on down. I'm not going to give you the introductory thing because I know you've been here. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for having me to speak with you all today. My name is Nicole Chaput. I've lived in Webster since 1996. As I said in my application, I became familiar with the city when I first started practicing. I worked for the same firm that the then city attorney worked for. So I build a lot of hours to the city of Webster. Researching and writing memos and drafting ordinances. And then I sat on the plan commission for several years, and most recently I was on the library trustee board. And I'm interested in the charter review commission or whatever it ends up getting called, hopefully not crab. Because I think it's just sort of interesting how this is our, our governing document, and it's, it's a, like any constitution type thing, it needs to be changed and reviewed and updated as time passes. And, like a budget, it's a direct reflection of the goals and values of the community. And I think it's interesting to participate in shaping what that's going to look like for the next however many years.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask you, you're kind of edging away from the microphone.
Too far away, okay.
Well, we just want to make sure everybody can
tend to
hear all your
blast,
answers. Emily, would you like to begin?
Oh, sure. Thanks for being here. Can you talk a little bit about your typical approach when you're working with a team?
Sure. I do work on a lot of teams and work groups at work, and then other volunteer projects that I've been on. So I'm really focused on developing consensus, making sure that everybody in the group has the opportunity to speak and share their views, especially if they tend to be more shy or quiet, or if they feel that their perspective might be different from that of the rest of the group. I want to make sure that all those thoughts are in the room. And I also try to make sure that we all understand the assignment and that we know what the deliverables are and we get to them on time and keep the conversation focused so we can get where we're supposed to get.
Great, thank you.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for applying. What core values would you bring to the commission?
I try to be in a situation like this, very thoughtful about what we're approaching, where we're looking at something that could involve some change for folks, making sure that I really understand how it is now, what might be difficult for folks about that change, and thinking about what obstacles there might be, what questions people might have, and helping, to the transition of, hey, this is how it was and it was great for a while. Things are a little bit different now. These are some things that we can all do to bring our community to a new level. I'm very practical about the way that I approach things, and I try to be very open-minded and, hear all different perspectives, think about things in a way that I haven't had before. And I think that you guys will do a great job getting us a group of people that will have a lot of different perspectives if I'm selected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks so much for applying. I'm sure that you've reviewed the Charter Commission multiple times in your past employment, but is there anything in particular that you think needs updating, needs to be changed, or that we should just leave it alone?
No, I think there's definitely room for improvement. Some of the stuff that other folks had mentioned, I read it side by side with the model code, so I kind of made notes along the way, not realizing there was a nice cheat sheet at the back summarizing all the new parts to the model. But I think that what I liked about the model and some things that I think we might incorporate are things that the city is already doing. Like I see us making a much stronger effort towards community engagement and building equity and inclusion issues into a lot of the things that we're doing. And I think it's really important for that to be in our governing document, just stating up front to ourselves and to the community that these are the values that are important to us.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Nicole, it's good
Hello.
to see you. Thank you for applying. What types of qualifications and background and expertise would you like to see on the board as a whole?
I'd like to see as broad a range as possible, people from all different walks of life, different backgrounds, race, ethnicity, different types of jobs, living in different parts of the city, just the entire gamut of what makes up Webster Groves.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Nicole. As you know, I'm glad that you applied. Can you speak a little bit to your experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and if you are willing to attend continued training in that area?
Yes, absolutely. When my kids were in school here, I was on the district's Equity in Education Committee. And as a member of that committee, I was invited to participate as a community volunteer in the same anti-racism, anti-bias training that the school district teachers participated in. So that was a year-long program with faculty members from throughout the district. And I was also in Focus Leadership St. Louis, and they put a big equity lens on everything they do. And I think it would be great if the whole commission went through training like that together. I think that's a really grounding opportunity, and you're all working with the same vocabulary and concepts as you move forward together.
Great, thank you.
Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, thank you for being here. This particular board is going to require quite a bit of time. Looking at your resume, you have seemed like a pretty busy schedule. How do you feel that you'll be able to dedicate specific time for the board?
I do. I'm not on any other boards or committees right now outside of work. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to get back into doing something else in the community.
Thank you.
So we're to that point where if there's anything that we haven't talked about, Nicole, that you would like to talk about, now is the moment.
Thank you. I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for applying. We really appreciate it, for being here tonight and discussing it with us. And we're going to get this job done soon here.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our list, hiding behind Morgan back there, I believe, is Tammy. Come on down. Tammy Bem, so just 30 seconds minute about yourself and why you've applied, and then we'll roll through some questions.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me to come and have the opportunity to apply to this. What inspired me to do so was the BDC meeting that we had right before the deadline. I asked how it was going, if there were any business owners, people that own brick and mortars that had applied. And at that point there weren't. So I wanted to throw my hat in the ring in case, we needed some of that kind of representation in the group. And that's about, that was, I like to help in the neighborhood. So.
And I know all of us up here know this, but in the audience, you own.
Oh, I own Maypop Coffee and Garden Shop.
Yeah. Okay. Emerson, why don't you get us started this time?
Thank you, Mayor. And Tammy, thank you for being here. Can you tell me, if you had the opportunity to read the current charter, are there any specific areas that stand out to you that need revising?
I would say, after having listened to some of the other applicants, they covered a lot of it. Language for sure, did some updating. Casual conversations with people, they mentioned the way that elections are done and what there used to be wards or such for council members, and that they expressed that there was some value perhaps in having a go-to person in your neighborhood to talk to about issues. So I think that's an interesting thing. Aside from that, there's not really anything else that stood out.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks so much for being here. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to working on a team?
Sure. I've served on several boards and committees over the years. And I've held leadership roles, but I would say that more recently, I tend to fit like a niche. So my role tends to be to fit niches that aren't filled, to make sure that we get good coverage, good communication, good collaborations and things like that. I would say that I play a strong support role.
Great, thank you.
Which I was going to say was demonstrated by you asking the question if we had any representation of business owners in the application pool. Which I'm going to mention is awesome that we have over 30 applications. Could you talk a little bit about your training or classes in diversity, equity, inclusion, and how you participated, or if you have?
So I have not had any formalized training on it. Would love to have some. I do follow the AID, the Alliance for Interracial Dignity, and have tried to initiate conversations both in our community, like in the Chamber of Commerce, and things that we could have done in there. Things in my industry. I'm very vocal on women's issues and more diversity and inclusion in our industry, because in the plant worlds and agriculture and things like that, it's not where it needs to be. So I haven't had any formalized training, would love to be a part of any if that becomes, an option. But we do take it very seriously and incorporate it into many things that we do at Maypop. We try very hard. It's a very strong part of our mission to be welcoming and opening to all members of our community.
Tammy, thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much for your investment in Webster Groves over the years. One question I had is, obviously, as a business owner, I'm interested in how our charter can meet the needs of business owners, both brick and mortar and also online. Is there anything in particular that you think the commission should look at in order to accommodate or to meet the needs of business owners, both now and also in the future?
Specifically, when reading through the charter, there wasn't anything that was glaring. I believe that as it's dug into, that there will be things that come up, and I'm hopeful that it'll also come before the BDC so that we can have a more broad conversation about it and contribute to it through that channel as well. But that's such a very broad question.
It is, and yeah, and I'm not trying to, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to throw a fast one on you. I'm interested because we are I think the only municipality with 3 taxing districts, and now we have obviously businesses like yours outside those taxing districts. And how can the city of Webster Groves mature and grow and invest in those businesses through the charter?
And as anybody that sits in the BDC knows, that I try to be that voice for those other businesses. They're not a part of that taxing district. I think that we're just starting to begin to understand the structure of why it is that way and things like that. But what we're doing to try and address it initially is to try and make sure that the voice, when we talk about businesses in Webster, is all inclusive, that we're not talking about specific districts versus others.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What does Maypop mean?
Maypop, it's a native plant to Missouri.
Okay.
It's a very exotic kind of flower. It's edible. It's a host for native plant or for native pollinators. It's a little fritillary butterfly. So it just kind of incorporates all of the things that, it's nourishment, it's, for humans, for the environment, and it's native. So, and it's absolutely lovely. It's the most exotic flower that you would never have guessed is a native flower.
Okay, thank you. I always wonder because I pass that all the time.
Yeah.
And so, given that you are very busy, I'm sure, do you think that you would have any challenges with the time commitment that's involved with the commission?
I don't think so. It's just one day a month. I'm also a member of the members board of the Missouri Botanical Garden. And so that my term there is starting to wind down. And I'm also on a community connector in North America for my industry. And I plan to step aside from that role soon. So there's a little bit of space to.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the makeup you'd like to see in the board, like what qualifications or diversity you'd like to see in the board as a whole?
Yeah, I think the more broad it is, the better. Even to, like people that are stay at home or work from home, but also often stay-at-home parents have the hardest job there is, but the more diverse people's perspectives are, I think the more of a rich view we'll have of the community and its needs. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Please do.
Just on the chance that you end up appointed with an employee of yours, that just any employee of yours, would you be able
Any
to?
random
any
employee,
random-
pick one.
Who might be sitting in this room right now?
Would you be able to set that aside and work as equals on a board together?
Actually, I think that when we work together, we work a little bit more as equals at MAPOP. It's a very open and free kind of environment anyway.
Great.
With a lot of shared communication and responsibilities. So I don't think it would be a challenge at all.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else that you might want to mention that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
Oh,
you for your service on
absolutely.
the BDC. Thank you for volunteering for additional service. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, I believe we are on Zoom for our next interview.
She's here.
Oh, good. Stacy Falk, I believe, is being brought on right now. Welcome, Stacy. There we see Stacy. Can we hear?
Hello. Hi,
Oh,
everybody.
good. We can see and hear you. That's awesome. If you will just take, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've applied, then we'll ask you a few questions.
Sure. My name is Stacy Falk. I have been a very proud member of the Webster Groves community since 2002. And I live in the Yorkshire area off of Edgar Road. So I'm right near the elementary school. And let's see, I've always been very involved with my neighbors. And years ago, I was actually part of Neighborhood Watch. So I used to just interact with neighbors throughout my neighborhood on that basis. And now I decided I wanted to kind of look into becoming even more involved on a greater
Great.
level.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I forgot which end we were going to start with. So Emerson, you're unmuted. So we're going to go with you while you're unmuted.
We have to have a long talk, Mayor. Stacy, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My question for you is that I assume you had ample time to read over the charter.
Yes.
Is there anything specifically you noticed that needs review and updating?
May I make just an overarching comment? As
Please do.
somebody, thank you. As somebody who has worked in healthcare marketing for the past 8+ years and continue to, something that would come up when we would kind of coach health plans of how to interact with members is reading level. And the charter has a very high reading level. And I know it's posted on the Webster Groves website. And my thought is, do people know what they're reading? Do they understand? Is there a true comprehension of what is outlined in the charter and what it means to them as a member of the community?
All right, thank you.
Sarah, when you're ready.
Hi, thanks so much for applying and for being here. Can you speak a little bit to the core values you would bring with you to this board and the process overall and describe them?
Sure. I was raised in a family that was very civic minded, I guess you would say. My father was part of the civil rights movement back in the 60s and actually the 50s and the 60s. So my parents have always been eager to be a part of political campaigns and be part of the community and take part in different organizational activities and just doing things on behalf of the community to make it better. So that was kind of instilled upon me as a young person, and I continue to follow that today.
Thank you.
Stacy, thank you so much for applying, and it's good to see you. Could you please describe your typical approach when you work on a team?
My approach is really to pay attention and to listen to everybody. I like to hear everyone's kind of point of view, observations, and kind of let that soak in and synthesize, and then kind of come up with ideas or ways to build upon those ideas. So I look at a team as a whole unit that works together. I don't, I guess for me, that's always been the way that I've actually worked in a workplace. I work best on teams and not solely alone, but it's everybody has equal standing, and I always think that's the best way forward.
Thank you.
Stacy, thanks so much for being here and for applying. After reviewing the charter, is there anything that sticks out to you that you think needs to be changed, or that the charter, the CRAB should examine or review?
I don't think there's anything blatant that's, that stands out to me. No, I feel like everything is separated out. It's organized in the right way, and it states specific points that are related to each topic. So just the reading comprehension is the only thing but I think I would say that's probably how all charters are. So it's hard to make it a layperson's tool.
Thank you, Stacy.
Stacy, do you have, thank you for applying.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have previous experience being on a board or a similar body where you were tasked with making recommendations? If so, decisions or recommendations, and if so, what was that? Can you explain that?
My volunteer work has mostly been serving on more of a fundraising aspect of different organizations. So pretty much it was making decisions on dates and places and things and themes, things like that, making sure that all the pieces would come together so that it would be the most beneficial and the best way to raise funds for an organization.
Thank you.
Hi, Stacy. Have you had the opportunity to participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion training? And would you be interested in doing more with the board?
I have not done any formal training. I've written about it a lot with some of my other clients, and I would like to participate in it.
Okay, thank you.
Stacy, this is the point in time where, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to share with us in terms of your, abilities, willingness to serve, any questions we haven't asked?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm a writer by trade. I don't think I shared that. That's been my professional role since I came out of college. So that's something that I always think is very important in how ideas are brought across to people. So that's probably my greatest strength of being a part of this.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. We appreciate you applying for the board and wanting to be a bigger part of our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stacy.
I do not, we're expecting Corey in person. Oh, there's Corey right there. Talk about perfect timing. Don't even bother to sit down. Just come right on up to the microphone. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. What? I'll help you with what's going to happen now,
Okay.
but your timing is impeccable. So we're, believe it or not, a little ahead of schedule. So
I heard that's
yeah,
amazing. It
it's
happens sometimes,
rarely.
not just with you guys, but with me
Yeah.
too.
So what we're going to ask you to do is just spend, 30 seconds to a minute telling us about yourself, why you applied to the commission. Then we'll ask you some questions. Most of those you've already received, so I think you know what's coming.
Yeah.
So please, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I applied because I think it's important to have balance in this process. And we all know that there are a few different viewpoints on what that should look like. And I think it's important to, as they say, preserve what is excellent about our fair city, but also find ways to move it forward. And I think that that perspective should be accounted for in this process. I feel that some may think that, it should be more, of a preserving process, whereas others think it maybe should be more of a progressive process. But I think it's important to balance those two. And so that's the perspective that I think that I can bring to the table. I think I'm fair-minded, and I want to make sure that both sides, if you want to think of it that way, are heard, and that the best of both sides are incorporated into whatever is ultimately presented for, a vote.
Great, thank you. Emily, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thanks for being here and thanks for applying. Can you, have you had a chance to kind of review the charter, and do you have any initial thoughts on recommendations or areas you'd like to look at?
Wasn't quite prepared to speak
know.
right away. Yes, that might help a little bit. Great question. I expected that one. I mean, like, if you didn't read at least part of it right, you
Shouldn't be a
shouldn't be,
surprise. Yeah.
right? I have not read the entire charter. I have read the sections that seemed most out of date, or perhaps open to interpretation, and then, or not interpretation, but perhaps in need of updating. I have scanned through the sections that many of them seem very straightforward, like, these things are not going to change. So, I don't, some people at one of the previous meetings I attended, I think they were joking maybe, but said maybe we, couldn't even, actually, I think Laura mentioned this, we could even throw out the whole thing. I don't think that's productive or necessary. I think there are some areas that may be out of date that could benefit from updating. And one of those, we had a recent example of, I think, I don't know, the years run together. Maybe it was this year, maybe it was last year, but in the last 12 months, we saw an initiative that was submitted. I think it was an initiative, not a referendum, that met the threshold of 10% of the electorate, signatures of 10% of the electorate of the previous election. I think that's a low number. I would like to see that number raised, for example. So I have read good portions of it with an eye toward portions that seem like they could use updating.
Thanks.
What is your typical, well, I think you kind of answered that question. Do you have previous experience on being on a board or a similar type body where you were tasked with making recommendations or decisions to a council?
Not in Webster Groves, but I did serve on the St. Louis County Grand Jury for 3 months in 2011. And, it's not quite an analogous situation, but I mean, it is in a way where, there were 8 other jurors. And we heard, I don't know, it had to be hundreds of cases from all over St. Louis County. And it was a very collaborative process and a very enlightening process. And I felt that it was kind of representative of what I think this process would be like. You know, I do work as a communications professional also, so I know that, you know, these kinds of exercises require a certain, you know, fair-minded, neutral approach, collaborative consensus building approach. And so I think that's very important. But I did learn a lot from that St. Louis County grand jury experience. And we heard some very high profile cases from the time, from that time. And I feel that you know, prepares me pretty well for this kind of experience.
Corey, thanks so much for being here and for applying. You started by talking about the idea of preserving versus progressive and how those two sides have to somehow come to an agreement during this process. One thing that we went through just recently in this city and that we're going throughout the nation is the idea of misinformation, disinformation, especially during elections. And I have no doubt that we're going to see a lot of it during this process as well, whether it's during the CRAB or during the referendum process when it goes on the ballot. How can this commission and how can this city council, do you think, ensure that there's less or a lack of misinformation and disinformation?
Well, I mean, you know, transparency is key. You know, if we approach this with, you know, the books open, with no hidden agendas, all the cards on the table, I think it's going to be really hard for those kinds of forces, let's just say, to concoct a narrative that is just not supported by the facts. I think it's also important, you know, it's a reality that, and I'm glad that, you know, our current mayor is engaging on social media the way she has. I think that's super important. I think we all know that social media narratives can take effect or take hold and propagate very rapidly, and they can become emotional. And I think it's important for this group to drain the emotions from the process as much as possible. But part and parcel of that is also communicating where the people are. I mean, you know, we know that there are 9,000 members of Webster Grove's Community Connect, almost 5,000 of Webster Grove's alternative community. Nine people here. So, you know, in reality, we would, or in a perfect world, we'd love for, you know, well, I mean, there's only so many, let's say 50 seats, you know, these seats to be full. But the reality is that the people are on social media as much as just as we are. And so the town halls that we would hold, I'm sure, would be well attended, but it's still going to be a fraction of the total populace. It's going to be a fraction of the number of people on Facebook, but making the decision-making process, or even just not just the decision-making process, but the, you know, the input process, transparent and open to all, you know, documenting whatever we can, presenting the facts on social media, I think is going to be crucial to avoid that.
Thank you, Corey.
Corey, thanks so much for applying and for coming very punctual.
Yes, this one was 7:40. The last one was 8:40.
Yes, we're being very efficient.
My bedtime is 10.
I would like to know more about your training or classes or education on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what your thoughts are on that. And would you be willing to participate in another thing of those?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I saw the question, and no, I have not ever participated in that sort of training. I'm definitely open to it. I think it's essential to trust in democratic processes for voices to be heard. I think we know that the city itself has a history, as do many cities in Missouri or the South. And we know there are cultural forces, I think, that can stack the deck against certain groups. And so I think it's important for us to, these opportunities don't come along very often. So I think it's important for the members of this group to be coming at this from a position of diversity, equity, and inclusion as much as possible. I don't necessarily think it should drive the process, but I think it should be a crucial part of the process. I know there is sensitivity from certain quarters who will say, well, there's too much of a voice from certain groups, and I just don't believe that to be true. I think it's important for us to take into all these things into account. Again, also because these opportunities don't come along very often, and our society is changing rapidly. Oops.
Do you have a quick question? We've actually run out of time.
No, it's
for-
okay. I think we've gotten a lot of it.
Okay, so I'm just going to say thank you very much. We appreciate the application, Corey. Thanks for being here. Thanks for getting here a little early since we were, and for being willing to be put on the spot immediately. So
Well, it's
we
not often
appreciate
that you
that.
get a text from this the city
City clerk.
city
Yeah.
clerk.
Yeah.
Over like, okay.
Said, leave it now.
So thank you very much. Yeah, you can have a seat. Absolutely. So that concludes our interviews, correct?
Correct.
So that is 30 applicants we've been through interviews with for the Charter Review Advisory Board. I'm going to just take a second to review what we're doing next and the process that has been outlined. And we'll just say that this process is based on past experience with the formation of some commissions and past Charter Review Advisory Board. And so what will happen is from here on out, each council member will submit 9 names of people they would like to be selected for the Charter Review Advisory Board. We'll see how many times I get this right during the thing here. Any candidate with 5 or more votes will just move forward and be placed on the commission. If we don't have enough people with 5 votes, then we will begin to discuss the potential for adding people based on those with the most votes. So we may not end up discussing all 30. In fact, it's unlikely that we'll discuss all 30 because we'll go from the most votes to the least votes until we have the full 9 members. And as we have discussed, also appointing 2 alternate members in case we do have a situation where someone has to leave during the course of the service on the board. So you all as council members need to submit a written statement to Katie of your 9 choices by Monday, which is the 12th of September, so that we have time to compile things and get them ready to go out with the next council meeting's packet.
And are we emailing those?
You can, yes, is that all right with you?
Yes, and I'll send you a completed list that some people have dropped off. So tomorrow I'll send that to you so you have a
Right, so we'll have the most up-to-date list of applicants to work from there. Other questions?
They're not ranked, is that right?
They are
just-
not ranked. It's simply 9 names.
And you said a narrative with each?
No, just the names themselves.
Oh, okay.
We'll have a discussion as needed for additional members based on the voting calculation of all of us taken into consideration. And just a note for the public, we won't publish anywhere the selections of the commission, but they are public records. So if you really want to know, you can certainly send us a Freedom of Information Act request and they will be provided to you. All right, are we all set on that process? And that discussion, by the way, will help happen on September 20th. I left that part out. So we should, at the conclusion of our next meeting, have those 9 names plus 2 alternates. Those of you who are here who have applied, you're welcome to stay for our wonderful revenue presentation that our finance director and assistant city manager is going to do here, or no one's going to, feelings are going to be hurt if you decide there are other places to go this evening.
So maybe you're.
Okay. No, I'm just, he's a good guy. He's, you know, he's been in government long enough to know he can't take things personally. So, so if you'd like to, please go ahead. And then Eric will let you begin whenever you're ready.
Can I just quickly?
please, go ahead.
This was a monumental task to get all these names and people interviewed. And I just want to thank Katie for all the
Absolutely.
hard work, and Laura obviously too, because we ran such a tight ship on all these, and normally this council runs behind mainly because I talk too much, but it's really unbelievable that we were able to do this so efficiently and effectively.
Well, I second, you know, frankly, it really is Katie, not me. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you believe in miracles? I do.
Apparently.
Oh, you know what? I went out of order, didn't I? That's why
Just
you were
say, I
surprised.
was like, oh.
You go right ahead. Would you rather us do the updates first? I didn't even look at my agenda. So we'll move you up here to the topic and then we'll have to do our
I
updates.
saw the title. I was like, what kind of streams are we talking about? Is this a flooding? Is this it took me a second to realize we were talking about money.
I apologize, Eric.
No different. That's no problem. Streams in the revenue world are streams because they flow. So you don't need the budget. For those at home, you don't need the budget, but I do encourage you, should you want the revenue narrative, which starts on page 62 in the budget document, that's online, offers much of the insight that we'll talk about tonight. Also to the members, we do have materials that would put at your desk. Obviously, the PowerPoint printout that we're looking at here. Two documents, which are, right from New World, are all funds revenue by account classification. Again, a reminder, a classification is a grouping of like revenue streams. So when we say property tax, that's all the property taxes across all the funds are in that property tax. And then this little bigger document is all funds, all revenue lines detail. So that's every revenue line that we get their detail going back to fiscal year 18. So it's going to give you, along with our budget this year, a 6-year longitudinal look. That's the data that goes into this PowerPoint. I will get to the pool list, but we also provided that. So list of the cities in the pool that we're going to talk about, pooled sales tax. And then on property tax, a great presentation, document about rethinking revenue from GFOA called The Root of Local Government Revenues, which is about property taxes. So we'll talk about all those things, but for those of you at home online in this riveting conversation that you're all going to stay up for, this all comes and is available on our website, in the finance website as well. So just click on property tax or sales tax. You'll see this link there. You can find all these documents. So again, our agenda tonight, as we get this moving forward, we're going to go over the revenue streams, also then talk about the restricted revenue funds and where they flow to, because that does change the world between all funds and general fund revenue. Do a quick property tax overview and the impacts that it has on the budget, sales tax overview and impact, talk about the revenue growth potentials, leave some space for you all to talk as well about what that may mean. And because when we say potentials, that may mean your actions or you kickstarting actions, and also the threats that we face to revenue streams here in Webster Grove. So this flows out of our fiscal policy conversation. So I do encourage you to stop and ask questions. I'll change camera views, and so we can go through this whole conversation. And Councilmember Smith, I've got you minimized, but if you just pop in, if I hear you, we'll be able to stop and move forward. So on revenue streams in the overview, we have 77 revenue streams that flow into the 15 funds of the city. And they're all, again, detailed. Sales tax, by far and away, by magnitudes of percentages, is the largest all funds and general fund revenue stream. And just quite simply, this is why we have a structural deficit. Our revenue is not always sufficient for expenditures. In the recent years, that is a true statement. A couple of years back, it was, 1 year it wasn't, 1 year it was type of moment. So when we look at a balanced budget, when we talk about the structural deficit and a balanced budget in that regard, the definition is our reoccurring expenses, things we know we're going to have year over year, not a firehouse, one time, not a fire truck, the things that are going to happen next year that we are unlikely to change. Is there enough revenue that we know will happen again next year to meet that need? And that's the ultimate issue of a structural deficit that we face. So to point that out, on the left, you will see all funds. Revenue is in red. White is the expenses. You can see where white has gotten bigger than red, higher up on the chart. Look at 2019, pre-COVID, our expenses were higher, all funds, than our actual revenues. Now, what's this big jump in 20? That's your bond sale for Firehouse 2. And then what happened in 21? Well, how come we have all these big expenses? There's the expending of the bond sale from 20, right? The expenses and the revenue were in different years. So all funds, while it certainly is the bottom line of everything we do financially, when we say it that way, it doesn't always shake out that the money we take in 1 year is being spent that year, right? So it's going to have some timing and variation. In 22, I think you see the greatest change there. You certainly have some Firehouse 2 spending in there, but really all funds, that's, you're starting to see the growth of the general fund budget and the insufficiency of revenues. Now, if you look over then to the right, you will see just the general fund. Try to get my mouse back here to move this out of the way. And you will see that the expenses have grown precipitously and keep moving up. This is our rapid rate of growth that we've talked about. Revenue underneath those expenses. Revenue here in 21, that's CARES Act, push that above that line, as we talked about in the budget. I think I've got a marker up here if I can find it. We'll go back this way. So our revenue stream overview, here are our account classifications. Property tax. Intergovernmental revenue is revenue that comes from other governments. Now, oftentimes we think, well, that's a small thing. It's actually really large the way we catalog revenue. Gasoline tax, motor vehicle fees, those things that are really state initiated taxation that we have a part of and receive parts of. Sales tax, utility tax, licenses, inspection fees, fines, charges for services, recreations fees, and other income. And we're going to go through these and I'll show you where we're at. The other financing sources are not shown, and ultimately it's because they zero out. Other financing sources simply for us, our revenue is all of our transfers between funds is revenue. So if we take money in, that's a transfer in, or if we transfer out, it's a revenue negative. So it's always zero whenever we look at other financing sources. That's all we mean is we've taken money from one spot, moved it over to the other. So in that point, here's property taxes. You can see on the left, 2018 to 2023, our trend line certainly is growing. We see the 2021 little shallow bounce there probably due to COVID and some of the values and such changing. But we are really happy with property tax and how it's working in terms of its stability. Intergovernmental revenue, same trend line. You can see large growth there. Lots of areas where that is coming through well for us. So we're very happy. That's a good line, a good classification for us. And if we do want to talk about any of these, you can just stop me and we'll dive right in. Sales tax, again, is our biggest contribution to our revenue. And we are approaching $10 million in sales tax revenue across all the sales taxes we've received. Now we get into the real problematic areas, and utility taxes are the first ones. We've talked about this in budget. We are really seeing declines in gross receipts, telephone. Our budget of 3.2 that we put in, I am highly unlikely that we'll see that be realized. Probably closer to the 2.9, which again is a bounce back from COVID years, but still nowhere near the previous usage, realizations in 2018 and even 2019. So I do expect that that'll be that's a revenue line that we continue to watch all the time. Electric has done pretty well, but we do see telephone really falling to be expected. We have less landlines, and we're going to be in lots of, as the mayor knows from her legislation committee, lots of conversations about how new technologies are in the taxed realm. Licenses have fluctuated, but in general, our trend line is down. So we did come back. Licenses would include business licenses and other things. Building permits and such. So some of this is not within our power, but we certainly don't have a stability there, as you can see what happened in 2020 You know, obviously to scale, these aren't as large as other lines, but they do affect the general fund. And again, this is all fees as well. So, but licenses, as we get to these smaller groups, these are all mostly in the general fund now. So inspection fees, these are fees we do charge to do inspections, obviously per the name, very stable, you know, slight fluctuation depends usually on the amount of churn in the development community and housing. We've talked about fines, not unsurprising. You can see where we were just a few years back with court fines, well over $500,000 down to about 319. I expect that we'll be right around budget, maybe a little more this year, but that's, you know, we don't expect to return back to those types of numbers. I'll also say that we have to report to the state our court revenues. We are well within our allowable margin, but we do watch that, right? And as we look at the budget and how does that work into that? Charges for services fluctuating. Again, this coming year, will we get to 720, our budgeted number? We don't know. You know, it's again, you know, questions of how many people will be asking for some of the services that we normally charge for. Included in this, why it's so big, is ambulance service. So they are a charge for service. So that's really what drives a big chunk of that number. And then recreation fees, as Director Davis has talked about, we have seen growth back in the recreation sector. Very happy to see that. When you look at those individual lines, again, the issues of fitness, you know, hasn't come back, but other areas have boomed back, right? So there's a story to be told even within the classification. Just quickly, other income, this 6.1 million, that's your bond revenue. So we're not giving you the bird there. We didn't mean to make the graph look that way, but that's bond revenue. So that's why it's got a big jump, but that's our normal. Other income is, you know, other things that are going to come in, miscellaneous and other issues, interest income and such.
Would CARES Act and ARP funds be on that?
So they would be in intergovernmental in the grants. So restricted revenue, these are areas of revenues that are restricted by either the nature of the voters or by state law on how these revenues are used. And it's important because it changes our calculus on spending, right? When you lose that discretion. So public safety as a whole has the most restricted funds. There are a couple, there's the Prop P half-cent sales tax collected by the county. It's a big line. It's about $1.3 million this year for us. That has to go to public safety. So that we move that out of the fund into the general fund this year, if you remember in the budget. So there's also a 1/4 cent sales tax, fire sales tax. That is only from point of sales here in Webster Groves. Has to go to support the fire department. There is a police and fire pension property tax. This was Prop R. I believe it was 2017 that it was passed. We put the pension numbers in so you could all see just the difference in pension contribution that the city makes that this fund supports. So general employees have an 8.9% support. General employees, myself, anyone not in the public safety sector, those in fire receive a 15% contribution from the taxpayers, 16% for those in the police department. That changes every year with our loggers ratio. So we don't set that because we're a member of loggers, the state pension, they tell us what that will be, but Prop R supports that increase that was given in pension benefit at that time. New Fire Station 2 has bond proceeds, have to be used for that. The debt service fund has its own property tax on all the things we put a property tax on. Parks receives 80% of the half-cent parks and stormwater sales tax. So that was the voters locally decided that, and the council put that vote to them. Capital improvement, there's a half-cent capital improvement sales tax. It's collected and pooled at the county, and then we get a share back, about 85% of that sales tax. So it's a pretty good pool for us, actually. Stormwater, again, gets 20% of the half-cent sales tax. Street improvement gets a property tax, and then there are sewer lateral fees added for the sewer lateral program. Briefly, you all know this, the business districts each have a property tax and a business license surcharge. Each of those rates are different depending on how those business districts were incorporated and voted to tax themselves. And then in general, grants are all restricted to what the grantor told us that we were going to use them for, such as ARP. Now, they gave us a very wide use, but If they had said like CARES, it has to go to things related to COVID, we would have been looking for those things. The grant fund really operates under that premise. And then interest revenue is restricted revenue that is credited to the fund that produced the investment. So if we have fund balance from capital improvement that we invest in, we make some pennies on the dollar for those investments, we put that back in that fund. So, the time value of money can help that fund as well. One of the things we want to talk about is committed revenue, because we don't often have, we have this idea, I think a lot in Webster, that we have committed revenue, but you have never formally as a council said, we have revenue committed like this. Again, recreation fees are a great example. They are charges for services, fees created by the Parks and Recreation Department. You don't have to give them to the Parks and Recreation Department. You could say that revenue flows somewhere else. That's committing revenue. We don't have any of those commitments, but it's an important designation to make, because there may be a time when a thing like municipal court fines, right, to really demonstrate that we're not using it, for general fund purposes, we may want to say we commit revenues to a certain purpose. And it's not a restricted fund, it's a commitment of how we book that revenue and understand that. So again, we have no formal commitments in place, but those are an option. I just bring that up because we often think that because we create the revenue in a certain way, it's got to be used that way. That doesn't exist. The point of the general fund is that discretion. So I want to pause there. I know that was a lot, but that's a big overview of all the lines and how things flow before we really get into the meaty parts of the topic. Make sure there's no questions before everyone falls asleep.
I don't even hear Emerson, so
Okay.
I think you're good
All
to
right.
proceed.
Property tax overview. Again, property tax, a very stable source of revenue for us. Out of all the funds, 19% of the money that the city takes in is property tax. In the general fund, it's 7.45%. This chart, when you look at it, almost straight lines. Property tax is very stable. It is a stable thing. It weathers recessions. As long as you've got property value, which we really haven't seen land prices plummet since the mid 80s, you've got a pretty stable revenue source in property taxes. The ultimate difference, as you all know, is that property tax is not the main game when it comes to local government in terms of municipalities. This, I'm sorry, I'm going to move this, come over here and try to get this. You may be shocked at this, but Zillow has told us that the average appraised home value in Webster Groves as of July was $397,530.
July of this year?
This year. So that's the average price. So again, you may want to talk about affordability. That's not the point of this, but that's a home, that's an average home here in Webster. When you calculate out the taxes, first of all, we only tax $73,000 of that. The city, out of $5,500 tax bill, the city gets $520. So you can see that the school district is by far and away the property tax recipient that really drives property tax. So this example will also be in our tax hearing tonight so that everyone can see it as well. I'll just roll through some things that you will see. Here's the pie chart. Residential property taxes last year in 2021, how they were split out. The city, again, is just a little over 9% of every property tax dollar. Schools together in there, 70%. Again, city commercial property taxes, just under 9% of that property tax dollar for commercial property. And on personal property, 9.31%. So again, property taxes really are driving school district spending. That is not, or school district funding, not to poo-poo on the school district. It's a very good source for us, but it's not the driver of, I don't want to call it a windfall, but of major systemic change in our revenue system without a massive expansion of how much property taxes are paid, obviously. This is our assessed value. We'll talk about this as well. Our assessed value went down. Not surprisingly, a little bit of change in value because they don't do all the residential and commercial in the even numbered year. But if you notice, look at our personal property, $25 million more in personal property. Almost every municipality in the state had a 20 to 26% jump, and that is due to used cars mostly. Your car values shot up. So all of us will likely pay more for our vehicle because of the semiconductor and supply chain issues of vehicles has just increased vehicle value that much. So I think I can load this from here. I hope I can. I forgot. Let's see if we can get this to load. I hope I can. This is a land use taxing issue, and I want to load this up. Just give me 2 seconds to get this on the right screen for you all. And we'll ask Katie to move if we help. We have created to help the residents. Katie, you're good. You don't have to do anything right now. Really understand how we use land. 2 maps that I think you will enjoy and the residents will enjoy. It's on our property tax website. I'm hoping it'll load very well for us. But this is, when you look at it, this is a GIS map. So we're going to give it a moment. And what it's going to do is show the property values of every parcel in Webster Groves. And the more valuable it is, the taller that spike on the parcel is going to grow. So I hope this loads for us. It did earlier today. Come on. There we go. So you're going to start to see this grow in this map. And so anyone can go to this right now. You can maneuver around. I'm going to zoom back out so you can see once it reloads, it'll take these moments, how tall that spike is. What is that spike? That big spike on the edge? Our highest value property is Laclede Station, the Lutheran services area down on Laclede Station Road. So you will be able to go in and do that. I'm going to zoom back in so everyone can start seeing it. You'll see some really high marks here. This one I've got my mark on right there, which you can click on and get the parcel data, is ours. That's Memorial Field in the rec center. Look at our appraised value for an untaxed. We're well at $10 million property. Now, I'm not saying we're going to sell it, but this allows people to see that value. And I do want to point out that for all of you at home and for all of you, you can do this and move around. You can go find your house. But I'll point out again, look at the value of our housing stock, where that higher value is, versus other areas, and then versus commercial properties and some of the biggest things that we have, right? So this is the value of land and how we use land in Webster Groves, according to the assessor who has to do these calculations. And then we allow people to come over here and actually look at, well, what did people pay in taxes in 2021? The same type of map. So we'll let this load up here. We are zoomed right in. Here's our Crossroads Business District. Here's Old Webster. Here's Old Orchard. And we'll let this load.
Did you create this?
So this is all free data that we just had IT. We worked with GIS. It took us about 4 hours. Put the data in. So this map will be, we intend as soon as 2022 is here to put the same data in so we can all have this same moment and drive through town on this map per se, every parcel of data. So no offense to all the people out there, but what you pay in taxes is a public record. So it's all there.
Great.
So
Councilman
again,
Franklin, if I can, I'm going to interrupt you, Eric. He's being incredibly modest. So he did create it. He and IT, they spent, it may have taken 4 hours to load it, but they spent a lot of time thinking about what type of data would be meaningful to our residents, to council, to whoever is interested in Webster Groves, and having all this public information in one very usable place and incorporating mapping. So incredibly proud of the work that both Eric and the IT team have done.
This is
Do
really.
you mind saying again what the higher level is? That's property tax.
yeah, so this map here is property taxes. So the higher the level, the higher that parcel paid in property taxes in dollars. So I'll give you an example that you can see. This is Algonquin, the golf course. See the blue color? As it gets more blue, that means it's paid more. So it is obviously paid more. Now, there are many parcels owned by the golf course at Algonquin. We've aggregated them, right? The same with an apartment building, rather than having it show up that they paid $1,000 when in reality they paid $40,000. We've aggregated the parcels. So this property here, while it is the highest assessed value, this is the Lutheran Manor down on Laclede Station. That's what they paid. If we just pull down, we can actually see our highest property tax value is here in terms of property tax paid up on Owen Ridge. So you can look through the commercial districts and see in terms of dollars. You can scroll right in. I think this also really does a great visualization for you of, what's not taxed here in Webster Groves. We had hoped to finish the final calculation to give you 40%, whatever the number is. We're still working on that, but we'll have that and posted to you. So this is again available. You can, you just pop right in, you can move around, you can come in. You can say, I want to drive in here down by Crossroads and see what we've got. And, so folks can do this at home. It's free and available. So encourage everyone to go use it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great.
Great work.
We're not done yet. Sorry.
No, on that, great work. I know
Yeah,
you still
no, I
have,
appreciate
you have
it.
more great work
Yeah,
for us.
so, but we do hope that people do use it. We hope you use it because we need to talk at some point. We will talk about this, about land use and revenue, right? So switching to sales tax, we have many different sales tax. They're all up here. We're going to talk a lot about the 1 cent pooled sales tax, the pool that the vaunted pool that took me a while to finally get all the data on. But we have other sales taxes as well. The 1/4 cent local option here in town, which is retained and pooled. The public safety sales tax, Prop P, pooled, so meaning we get it from the county. I want to be clear that every one of these that says pooled is a different pool. There's not one of them the same that operates the same as the other tax. So there's a different formula that goes into every one of these pooled taxes. The 1/4 cent fire protection, 1/2 cent capital improvement, the parks and stormwater tax, and then our new 1/2 cent local use tax, which is retained revenue. So it means the state will collect it, but everything done within Webster Grove's jurisdiction will be our revenue and not shared with other municipalities. So here's our sales tax overview. Ignore the 22 to 2023, great stable source of revenue, and it is growing. We do see the growth coming there. 33% of all funds of the general fund, almost 35%, just a shade. I mean, we'd round that up to 35%. The reason you see the red line, which is general fund, making such a dash this year, and that the black line, that's the public safety sales tax fund, is we closed that fund and moved it to the general fund. So we just really moved that revenue, which is showing the general fund as this massive increase this year in sales tax.
But Eric,
Yeah.
let's be clear, that's an accounting function.
Totally
It's not a difference in how we're spending the funds.
Absolutely. We have not suddenly received a whole nother $1 million out of the.
Well, and we're not all of a sudden spending Prop P money on things other than public.
That's
safety.
correct. Yes. Yep. So when we talk about the pool, this is the 1 cent that gets pooled. There are 4 types of governments that are involved in the pooled sales tax. There are type A cities, point of sale cities, meaning they retain almost all of their sales tax that they sell. Most of our neighbors, Rock Hill, Brentwood, Maplewood, Shrewsbury, Marlboro, all retain their sales tax. And then there are type A, B cities, which have anything before 1984, their downtown centers, essentially. Kirkwood is a great example. That's a retained sales tax. However, the Target in Kirkwood was annexed in after 1985, so that's part of the pool. So the city itself is split in terms of where it's getting its revenue. And so anything that's in that B side is going into the pool that we benefit from. And then we are a type B pool city. 58 cities across St. Louis County are in the pool, along with all portions of the unincorporated county, which we do have border with us to the south, right down by Crestwood and Grantwood Village. So in 2021, there's a logarithmic formula that works on type A cities, and what they put into the pool, they do put a little into the pool. So, sales that happen in places like, what's a type A on top of my head? I just lost it. Sales that happen in Brentwood, a great example. Around a little over 10% went into the pool out of those types of sales from type A cities. Type AB, so that area of type A cities, that's a B city, and also all of us B cities, we put 100% into the pool. So we take our sales tax that we collect here, that the state collects for us, but from our businesses, they go in the pool along with whatever happens in the unincorporated county. So that's how the pool gets filled up. In 2021, that was $176 million that went into the pool. And then distributions come about because of population. So the pool distribution is on a per capita basis. They take every month, the pool's receipts, divide it by the type B city and county population. So 58 plus the county population, that determines the per capita share. So let's just say that's $100 a person, but that's not, but let's say it is. That is then times our population, because we're a type B city. That's how much money we get out of the pool, okay? And there's an annexation adjustment built in. And what that really is meant to do is that about 10 years ago, there was a real concern that we were all going to start gobbling up unincorporated county land into the cities, and the county would be fully incorporated and left without any funds. And so they built a floor in that said at least 10% is always going to go to the county, since they've been contributing into this. So the pooled sales tax obviously has many different factors in that formula, but the three things that we need to think about is TIF funding firstly comes out. So it doesn't matter where the TIF's at, anywhere in the pool, TIF funding is going to be removed. So if you remember in the Douglas Hill conversations, we talked about the EATs with a TIF, the economic activity taxes. If we are deferring any of them because of a TIF anywhere in the county, that comes out of the pool, that deferral before we get what the pool is going to have in it. And then what affects the pool? It's just like a pie. How big the pool is how much you put into it. And then how do you split it out? That's by population, right? How many slices do you need to cut of that pie?
Can I ask you a
Yeah,
quick question?
go ahead.
Sorry. On the TIF funding, that's for any type of city in the county? Or that's only for like the type B city?
So that is for any type of fund, any type of city, but depending then if they're a type A, they're not going to have that 100% of the TIF. It's going to be built upon that ratio of what they're putting into the pool.
Okay.
If it's us in Webster Groves that has a TIF, it's going to be 100% of whatever we've deferred removed out of the pool there, because we're 100% city in the pool.
Right.
So.
And the population of the pool participants, so the population in your city, period, across the board. That's not,
The 58 cities and the unincorporated county.
but when they split it up, so when you said, when they talk about the distribution to your area.
Yep.
That's contingent upon the population in your city, the
Exactly.
percentage of that you
Right.
get.
Exactly.
Regardless of home ownership, rental, did it,
Doesn't matter.
food, children.
They use the
both
census.
agreed.
Yep, exactly.
They use
And
the 10-year census.
They use the
for
10-year
10 years.
census. Yep. So,
Okay.
so the pool has operated that way since the 70s, really, but the changes have come with, okay, the type A, B cities, how do we deal with new cities taking more land? But then also the conversation about, like Chesterfield has certainly grown in a big way, right? How do we provide some equity in that? There's been all sorts of conversations about that topic. And that's one of the points I want to really draw out as we talk about this is, let's just look here at this chart. 2016, we got $3.3 million from the pool, put in 1.9. That's 166%, right? In 2022, with a higher population, we're getting 136% of what we put in. Look at how our local sales tax, what we create here, grew by 2.6 million, but our return only grew by a couple 100,000. Okay, so I mean, we really did it's still a great benefit to us. I want to be very clear. The pooled sales tax is great for us, but there are conversations about that pool and things we need to look at on how we better our own spot within the pool, which is really in a lot of ways population, right? We have to grow a little faster than Chesterfield can pop homes up all over and other places, right? So how do we grow at a rate? We grew about 1,000 people, 4% between the 2010 to 2020 census. So how do we grow to beat the pool, but then also the economic health of the entire pool, right? I mean, you're seeing Wentzville really come in and affect economic activity in the county, right? If you can shop at the big center out in St. Charles, that doesn't help the pool at all. How many of us go out there, right? So, I mean, if you're getting out of the county in any way into other places, you're not helping the pool, which is fine, but we all change that. Use tax is also going to affect us all here as well, right? I mean, we probably saw some online shopping affecting the pool. However, if we don't do something, I do think won't be anytime soon, I'll probably be retired, but at some point the pool will start to become a question for Webster Groves. Do we stay in, right? So again, I want to point out as we look to revenue growth and really turn back to a conversation with you, as you look at land use decisions, promoting density, which is what they're going to talk about in this document I gave you, does help increase values, which increases revenues. These are things you can do without needing to go to ask for more taxes. And then population increase to really help build that sales tax pool growth. Obviously, we've got great money coming in locally on the 1 cent sales tax, right? On that, on what we're doing locally. So how do we continue to support those local sales shopping local? Overall fees and charges for services, I know we're right in line with a lot of places, but we got a pretty good deal for our residents. We do a lot of work for a lot of things that we do. Give you an example, all the occupancy inspections we do, it's $20,000 of revenue. And so there's a question to ask about, is that enough a return for the kind of work that we send out between the inspectors and such that happens? And then do you, and I'll stop here to have some good conversation, do we seek voter approval or a legislative change for other types of revenues or tax collections in some way, restricted or general? Property tax, sales tax, changing on other things. Give you an example. We charge a $6.50 auto fee as a part of a motor vehicle fee that goes on personal property. So if you have 2 cars, you pay $13 to the city. We have been capped by the state at that rate since 1985. How many more cars, how much more congestion is in Webster Grove since the middle 1980s to now that we could use in that kind of fund if the legislature wasn't in our way and those kinds of things. So I want to stop there. We're in a revenue conversation before we talk about threats to open it up and really converse about.
Yeah, so
Are there
why don't
potentials?
we take this time? Any questions for Eric? Any general comments? We are not going to solve our revenue issues tonight, but Eric has provided us with an extremely well put together presentation of where we are. So I just don't want anyone to think that we need to solve this right now. But questions, comments, please, let's go.
I have some questions about sales tax. I mean, I think of the Subaru dealers moving to Crestwood was a negative for us, and that we lost, a business that sells big ticket items. I think of the appliance stores as being a good thing that we still have here. I would be interested in just kind of learning, can we see by sector what types of businesses generate a certain percentage, either rank them or just I'm just curious about that.
So we do have access. So this had changed. Obviously, the state became the sales tax revenue collecting agent more firmly in 19, I believe. So we have access to the state database of what our businesses are paying in. Now, there are some proprietary concerns there about what they've paid in some ways. And so we have to understand how we can use that data. But my hope is to actually, if we can, build a map very similar to what you just saw with sales tax collections and where that's coming from. And then also, be able to break that out by sectors for you.
Yeah,
and
if
show.
you wanted just categories is, I do understand the proprietary nature of it.
Right.
So.
Yes, and Emerson, you see that hand?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Eric, go back to the following slide for me.
Okay. Give me 2 seconds to find my mouse. This one on revenue potentials.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's possible, it looked like density is an important factor in maybe calculating future income. Is that a correct statement?
Absolutely, yes. For the city's income, yes.
Yes. So is it possible to get some type of calculation or some kind of forecast to say, if our density was this is how much income we can, revenue we can maybe expect?
So we'd have to make some assumptions, but yes, we know the population of the pool and what we would expect. And so if we, looked, would take some time, but I think we could get to, looking at the growth that we see in other areas. And if we were intentional, what we could see by 2030 and what that would do to revenue with a new census.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, could I ask, you're a consumer, you want to spend your dollar, and all things being equal, say you want to benefit the city the maximum amount. How do you rank the places to shop? So shopping in Webster would be the top, right?
Correct.
And then is the next one online or is the next one county?
So that's a great question. If, obviously, we want folks to shop in Webster Grove, support our businesses. It helps all of our revenue lines. Actually, not surprisingly to many of you, now that we have a local use tax, we would want folks to go to the local use, to go online if they're not going to shop in Webster. But if you're wanting to go visit somebody, look online and go to this list. And if it says type B city, go shopping there. We want you to go to Creve Coeur. We want you to go to Florissant. We want you to go to even the smallest of our neighbors. You know, we want you to go to Maryland Heights. We love our neighbors in Brentwood. We want you to come spend your money elsewhere, though. If you're a Webster Groves revenue concerned resident.
And do you have this on our website now? Because when I've looked for a list of pooled cities in the past, it has proven very difficult. So this
It
is
has proven
awesome.
very difficult for finance. So we finally got the list and we made it for you here. It's in a PDF and also online so people can find it on our property tax, sales tax page.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot here, I think, but I know that the importance of the pooled city tax and the amount of effort it has went into creating it and also maintaining it over the years. But obviously, we see something by doing this, that as we go further down the line, that the pooled city tax may not be beneficial to municipalities like Webster Groves in a long time away, but nevertheless. So wouldn't it be advantageous to start figuring out, well, what's the next thing?
I absolutely agree with you. I think that's, yes. And on top of it, just from a sufficiency argument, right now, we need to figure out what's the next thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've got that threat with a structural deficit, but that always should be part of our, not just our budget conversations, but our policy review and such. Are we 5 years down the road, just like your business, how are we going to sell enough widgets to make the budget that we've created for ourselves? Right. And so we're going to have to do that too with revenue. Where do we go next? If the pool is going away, is that, or if it's not advantageous for us, is that 300,000? Is that $400,000 a year we lose? Is it $1 million? How do we make that back? Or where do we see other changes to really deal with that? And there are a myriad of things. There are a myriad of options. I mean, like I mentioned, just the automobile fee, but most of them were precluded from. Like I personally, not suggesting we should do this, but personally, I'm a very big fan of a local income tax. It's far more progressive, really deals with a kind of context like we live in, but we can't do that from the state. We're preempted, but is this the type of thing we put our shoulder into? And that's what, we do to fund sustainability or to fund public safety going on to the future. So.
But I appreciate that. I think that's a really good argument and a really good point. Density alone is not going to solve our problem.
Density will not. That's a tool to really look at how do we maximize revenue from that perspective, and also other potential issues, affordability, things like that.
Because in order for density to even become a factor, we would have to meet the same growth rate as St. Louis County and some of these point B municipalities.
Correct. And the county really hasn't grown. So
Yeah.
we're really seeing that in other certain areas. You see the North County sort of depopulating in some regards, right? And so you've got type B in somewhat staying at the same rate. It's just certain cities are getting bigger within that, right?
Yeah.
They're getting that bigger slice of the pie that way.
And when we saw with the, development conversation, that density was a huge concern that we didn't want to see, but then you see the impact that density has on this. But what you did just say is that density isn't the only tool that we have.
That's correct.
To get out of this.
So really density and those first two bullets up there are really about using what is in our revenue toolbox now and how do we affect them. I doubt you're going to see property and sales tax go away anytime soon. So to me, I don't want to say low hanging fruit, but it's the first steps, right? I mean, these are in the toolbox right now. Voters have approved them. How do we maximize them and really look at some decisions? Like how best do we use old car dealerships and parking lots and things that, for redevelopment. But also then there are other things that can be done down the road to really enhance revenues as well. They're not on this list simply because we haven't thought of them yet, or we haven't, haven't gotten around to those great policy conversations.
All right, I'm going to suggest that we all take a very close look at this. I'm going to guess, Eric, because it is like you, that you are open to individual conversations with
Absolutely.
council members over any aspect of this presentation, because this is really just step one in where we're going here and the discussions we're having. So thank you very much. I appreciate the excellent presentation. I'm going to suggest that we go a little out of order. Katie, you can tell me if this is allowed. That we take our council manager meeting updates and our appointments to boards and commissions and hold them after our regular meeting.
Sure, we can reconvene the work session.
And then why don't we go ahead and have the roll call and the presentation of the swim proclamation, then we'll take a very short recess before we finish the rest of our regular meeting.
Sure.
That's all okay? Does
Yes.
anyone object to that?
Can I just say one thing, Eric? One way to increase population would be start merging municipalities. If we were to merge with Crestwood or Shrewsbury or Rock Hill, then we automatically become a greater piece of that pie.
Council member, you're certainly correct. And there is, and I didn't want to bring this up and scare everyone, but there is unincorporated space that directly conjoins us. I mean, we could look at annexation as well.
Thank you.
It's challenging, but can be done. Yes.
All right, let me.
Mayor,
do my-
before we move on, could we
Yes.
look at the board and commission appointments real quick?
Oh, you want to go ahead and do those? Okay, so we have Dorothy Englis interviewed for one of the two vacancies. Dottie is actually how for the Arts Commission. Would we like to appoint Dottie? All right, Philip Mitchell appointed to the applied to the Traffic Advisory Commission for an alternate member spot.
It's-
Are we,
It's an alternate member.
it is an alternate member. Are we would like to appoint Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Beth Corelli has served one term on the Arts Commission and wishes to be considered for reappointment. Do we wish to reappoint?
Yes.
I hear no, so I'm going to go with a yes on that one. All right, that does it for our boards and commissions. So we will then switch very immediately, and I promise council will take a break in a minute, but we're going to switch right away to our regular meeting. I, first of all, before we even start, would like to thank our swim team families and our swimmers for your patience. I know we're behind schedule, so thank you for both being here and waiting so patiently. And for those of you who are younger students, you did an excellent job. So thanks for that. All right, welcome to our meeting. Please note that residents can share comments in person, virtually via Zoom, using the raise hand option, via email or US mail to our meetings. All speakers are allowed 3 minutes. And when you speak before us, and we are happy to have you here today. If you would like to speak, please fill out a speaker card, which you could find on that table over there if you are with us in person. And just remember, if you're not, to use that raise hand function. And we are going to start with the roll call, and then we'll go to the proclamation for the Webster Wave Swim and Dive team.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
All right, so this is my pleasure as a former swim team parent and volunteer coordinator to welcome the Webster Waves to our meeting tonight. Give yourselves a hand. We have a proclamation for you all in your winning ways, which I will now read. I know that I saw the trophy somewhere, didn't I? Okay, the trophy's here, so we can get a picture with the proclamation and the trophy afterwards. I'm going to go through a lot of names here, and I'm going to try and get them all right. And if I don't, feel free to correct me or just be nice about it and tell me whisper in my ear next time. Either way, I don't mind. All right. Whereas the Webster Wave Swim and Dive team was comprised of 260 swimmers, divers, and junior swim team members, the vast majority of whom are Webster Groves residents. And as the result of the team members' hard work at practices, positive attitude, and determination, the dive team went undefeated in dual meets, and the swim team enjoyed its second consecutive undefeated season under coach Meredith Nash. And whereas the swim team placed first in the St. Louis Municipal Swim and Dive Conference Championship for the 11th straight season or more, we don't even know how many times in a row now. The dive team finished second in conference in the 11 and older age group. And whereas the city wishes to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the parent team reps in making 2022 a successful season, namely co-presidents Stephanie Seifert and Kelly Leary, computer reps Walter Duke Destada, and Ann Pennick, volunteer coordinators Judy Dante and Nicole Spiegel, bullpen coordinators Nancy Rolfing and Jessica Johnson, dive rep Julie Lewis, and treasurer Susan Purcell. And whereas we recognize head swim coach Meredith Nash, assistant coaches Taylor Knapp, Trevor Mahoney, Mackenzie Fisk, and Ginny Northcott, junior swim team coach Catherine Drennan, dive coaches Ashley Bosch and Jacob DiMaggio for their dedication, leadership, and efforts that went beyond the sport to teach sportsmanship and lifelong lessons. The city also recognizes the significant parental involvement that it takes both in roles of leadership and as volunteers to make this a wonderful season. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, September 9th, 2022 as Webster Waves Day in the City of Webster Groves. Yay. Right. I assume who wants to receive the proclamation?
We'll have all the kids.
All right, come on, everybody. Anyone else in the council can come be in the picture if they want to be. You know me. Okay, you got this. Stand right in the middle. Okay, good. You want to step around on this stuff? Congratulations, everybody. Good job. Well done. Thank you. Well done. Who gets to keep this?
I end up with it.
Okay.
As when I'm in interview.
We can come down that. You don't have to stay opposed in the picture. Well done. Have a 5-minute recess now, please, so that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you want to take a little break, and
Yes.
you're welcome to stay. I'm not. So you're also welcome to go home. Whenever, okay, now let's call this meeting back to order. Again, we will proceed with our orders of business here. Our next order of business is a second resolution. Thank you to the longest serving senator in the United States, Robert Byrd. We every September celebrate Constitution Week. So here is our proclamation for Constitution, the celebration of Constitution Week. Whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 235th year anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City Council of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2022 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Yay, Constitution Week. All right, we now are moving on to our first public hearing, and I am opening the public hearing. And who is doing the presentation?
Reading the title.
And we are reading the title. And do I read the title or does Neil? All right, we are opening the public hearing for levying and establishing the rate, of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 by the city of Webster Groves, Missouri.
Now it's me. Madam Mayor and members, it's my pleasure to present the property tax rates as proposed. These numbers are pre-BOE, which means the Board of Equalization has not changed the property tax rates. I just want to say total caveat, they actually have met. We do have the new valuations. What we don't have back yet is the confirmation from the auditor of the rates that we have proposed based on those recalculations. So everything tonight is what we call pre-BOE. Just trying to find my clicker here so I can move us forward. So real quick background on property taxes, because we go through this every year. Real property is assessed or determined the value in odd years on January 1. Personal property is determined January 1 of every year. So the vehicle market value is also determined by the National Auto Dealers Association October report of auto vehicle values. So that number that we're talking about is the appraised or market value. Could you press 2, make sure I'm on that camera? You see there, just for everyone who's watching at home.
2.
There we go, perfect. And so once that market value has been determined, then there's a percentage based on the classification of the property that becomes the assessed value. And that's what we tax on, is the assessed value. So most of what we're talking about is real estate, residential real estate. Your home in Webster Groves, 19% of your appraised value is your assessed value for taxes. Agricultural land, which we have none of in Webster Groves, is 12%. Commercial land is 32%. Your personal vehicles, if you have a historic auto classic car, it's 5% of value is what we tax on in the state. Farm equipment and grain, I won't go through, but cars, boats, and things like that, many folks have them, 33 1/3%. So for those at home, for all of you here, if your house is worth $100,000, you would be assessed at 19%, which means your tax property is $19,000. And then the tax rate is applied to that number. So when you look over here on calculating the taxes, you take that 19,000, you divide it by 100 times the total tax bill. Let's say it's $7, and you would pay $1,330 in your residential property tax bill for the year. That formula is set by the state, hasn't changed in many years. Classification, this big part here is all done by the assessor, at the county. So that is why the Board of Equalization and the work at the county is important. Our job is setting the tax rates, which are limited by the Hancock Amendment and the values of the land. So that's why the state auditor is involved. Again, our valuation has fallen just slightly this year in both commercial and residential, while our personal property has skyrocketed by 26%. For those who weren't here at the earlier presentation, the biggest part of that is the value of your used vehicle went up with the supply chain issues and semiconductor issues of buying vehicles. Your vehicle went up. So you're probably going to see a change in the tax rate, the taxes on your vehicle, on your personal property tax bill. Again, residential and commercial generally fell in most areas. Crossroads commercial, slight increase in Old Orchard residential, and also but a fall throughout Old Webster and Old Orchard commercial. These are the tax rates we set for the city. Here, we don't set for the school district or the county. They obviously set the rates themselves. Wanted to give you a sense of the change in valuation across other cities. So that's what this chart does. I know it's a lot of small numbers, but it's also available online. So you can see our residential value fell a little bit. Oakland went up a little bit. Glendale went down a little bit. Rock Hill, Brentwood, Maplewood, Shrewsbury all went up a little bit. Marlboro, Crestwood, and Kirkwood went down a little bit. You'll see mostly commercial went down. Look at Glendale's change in commercial, 14% increase. Not sure what that's about. Haven't looked at it. But when you look at personal property here, you see some massive increases. Again, property or values of cars really moved that number when we talked to the assessor about it. So this is great data, just shows you all of our neighbors that border us, how their valuations changed 21 to 22 for this tax year. So this is our rate that we are proposing as part of the conversation at the hearing. The general operations or general fund residential rate is down just a shade. Street improvement rate is down. Police and fire pension debt service staying the same. In Crossroads, it's a commercial rate only, and that is up per the state auditor. The Old Orchard Tax District residential the same, commercial up. Old Webster residential and commercial increasing. The rates in commercial do change there a little bit. You see up in the regular funds, and then personal property tax at the same rate. So that is not changed. Again, the auditors approved these numbers pre-BOE, so now we're waiting on them. And at the 20th, when we adopt the tax rates, the new rates will be included. So what does that mean? I want to talk about your city residential tax as a share of the total tax rates. Every dollar paid in residential property taxes is changing what it buys here at the city. Think of it that way. I put my dollar in. Out of that dollar, I'm putting more money now into debt service and the police and fire pension this year, just by a little bit, not huge changes, but small. But the general fund and street improvement purchasing power of that residential tax dollar has gone down a little bit. And that's based on how we budget and the value of the property assessments. These are the 10-year look back at our residential rates from 2011 to 2022. So you can see many different, this red line that I'm tracing over, that's the general fund. The rate has gone down. So as we get more value, the rate adjusts, right? In some ways, and that's the Hancock Amendment kicking in. How does, and I want to just differentiate, we just had a conversation about revenue. New construction changes that rate, right? If we take what exists and it just becomes more valuable, the Hancock Amendment's going to lower your rate and keep you in a very stable flat line of revenue. It is new construction added to the value that brings the revenue volume up, even though the rate is not changing much, if that makes sense. You see up on top here, the top line, that is the, I believe the Old Orchard line, this yellow, trying to find my mouse, there it is. Yellow line is debt service. The white line is the Old Webster taxing district. The blue line that makes a big jump is police and fire pension. That's Prop R in 2017. You see the increase approved by the voters there in that rate. Where did my mouse go here? Come on, come back. There we are. So those are the rates and the history of them across the city. So when we look at the dollar that people pay for residential property taxes, we are by far one of the smaller organizations that benefits from it. The largest out of every dollar, almost 58 cents goes to the school district, 13 cents to the special school district. We get 9.39%, or not a little over 9 cents on every dollar on the residential side. The commercial, and excuse me, play that out for those who have just joined us. Again, our appraised value, according to Zillow, the average home in Webster Groves is $397,530. You run it through the tax calculation in 2021. Last year, they paid $5,558 of taxes. 521 went to Webster Groves. So the vast majority of taxes pay for education in terms of property taxes. Commercially, we get a little less of the dollar. The commercial taxes, again, benefit the school systems, just under 9%. And your personal property tax, I'm sorry that shifted on you all there, so you can't see it very well, but it's the same, it's 9%. So these three pie charts really flow across the same way. Sorry about the change there in the numbers. We also, by state law, set the tax rates for the library. And so the valuation for the library has gone up a little bit. And I got asked last year, and I have an answer for you. We actually, because we have changed our borders for the city, we have moved some land to Brentwood and such and across the way and made some boundary changes. That doesn't have changed the boundaries of the library district. So there are some what are now parcels in Brentwood that we have given up as part of their project that are still taxed for the library. Hence why their base is a little different than ours. And so their rates are going to go down. You can see the residential rate goes down a little bit. The commercial rate goes up. Personal property tax rate stays the same. I do want to be clear that there are two separate rates that are blended here. There's library and library temp, which no one really understands why they ever called it temp, but it relates to the building project that happened. So this is a blended rate. We only need to set one rate. So we take those two taxes, we blend the rate, which is easily done. And that becomes the rate that the auditor approves. So that is the history of their tax rate. You can see the falling tax rate of that blend the rate again back to, current value. Existing stock gets better in value, rate goes down because of the Hancock Amendment. And with that, I believe we are at questions. All of this, all the data for anyone who is watching at home is posted on the finance page. You can find our budget, anything about ARP, the 5-year fiscal plan, and property and sales tax information there.
Questions from council? Do we do the first and second reading or public comments first?
Public comments.
All right. Does anyone have a public comment on the tax rate public hearing? If you have public comments on other issues, then we will have a time for that shortly.
And we're checking on Zoom too.
Thank you.
2 seconds, sorry.
2 seconds.
See any? No hands.
All right, then if there are no questions or comments,
And then Neil needs to enter the items for the public hearing.
so,
And then we
oh,
can close.
good, he's unmuted. So Neil, could you proceed, please?
Yes, I'd like to move for the introduction or the admission of all the documents referenced by Mr. Peterson, in particular, the PowerPoint presentation would all be admitted into the public record.
Thank you. Emily, would you call for the
And then
first?
close the public hearing.
And I would now close the public hearing. Thank you all. Remember, I'm kind of new at this still. I'm learning how to do it. We are closing the public hearing and now we call for the first and second reading.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9192.
Second.
Neil, that's you, I believe. First and second reading.
Actually, I don't have a copy. Eric, could you read for me?
Certainly. First reading, Bill number 9192, an ordinance levying and establishing the rate of the annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 by the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, and repealing ordinance number 9157.
Any questions or comments?
So, yeah, I do. I'm sorry. So with what Eric gave us, we're proposing that we adopt according to like where they went down, then this is now the reduced rate, where they went up, this is a reduced rate. Okay.
Yes. All right. Anyone else? We'll have the second reading then, please.
Bill number 9192, second reading, an ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 by the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, and repealing ordinance number 9157.
All right, thank you. We're now going to open the public hearing for levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 for the Webster Groves Library District. The information was presented with our previous public hearing. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make a comment about the library taxing district rates? All right, if not, then Mr. Bruntrager, could you help us with our documents?
You're muted, Neil.
You're muted.
Sorry, for the purposes of the public hearing, I'd move for the admission of the PowerPoint and any comments that were attributed, including the comments of council, that they be moved into the record of the public hearing.
Thank you. So that will therefore close the public hearing now, and Councilmember Alexander, if you could call for the first and second reading of 9193, please.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9193.
Second.
Bill number 9193, an ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 for the Webster Groves Library District and repealing ordinance number 9158.
Questions or comments? All right, we'll go straight to that second reading then, please.
Bill number 9193, second reading, an ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2022 for the Webster Groves Library District and repealing ordinance number 9158.
All right, thank you very much. We now will proceed to the remarks from the community and visitors to our meeting. And we're going to start with Kim Wilkins. Kim, if you would like to make a public comment, you can come on forward here.
Well, I just wanted to know, are we going to address the floodplain? It says on here.
Why don't you come up to the microphone so that anyone who's at home can also hear your question?
I live
at 834 North Forest and my house flooded. So I've been told I have 3 things to do at that house. So do those same people back there. But our question is, on the flood information. We wanted to talk about buyout. Is that even a possibility with Webster Groves?
So again, usually we don't comment on public comments, but this is a very specific question. We will have a presentation that includes what we have learned so far about buyouts. And so that will come, the new business section should not take very long at all for us to go through. So we will get to this presentation shortly.
Okay.
And you should get more information. And then once you have the information, if you have additional comments for us, you're free to write to us as council members via email, regular mail, or, call and talk to myself or any of the other council members about what
Okay.
you've heard.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Our second speaker's card is from Dave Buck.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. Nice name change to this section, by the way. I like. This shares an additional thought on strategic planning, which I hope remains a top priority of council. I haven't heard anything yet. Setting and achieving goals is an essential element of any strategic plan. For you, I believe there are 2 kinds of goals to consider. The first are the more familiar, quote, hard, rational, and tangible goals, such as fostering new development, increasing the tax base, reversing the decline of our Black population. But the second kind are less familiar, and they are the, quote, soft, emotional, intangible goals, which can be just as big as and imperative. Here are the 3 that I believe are needed most in our city, and they are all linked together. 1, restoring trust. As I have said before, committees move forward at the speed of trust, no progress. I believe that trust has been damaged a bit within City Hall and between City Hall and our community, but can definitely be restored for real progress again to occur. Second, reclaiming the values and character of our community. Our personal character is defined by our values. Same is true of our community, with values such as honesty, kindness, and empathy. But in recent years, our community seems to have lost its way a bit. You already have a good start, as diversity, equity, and inclusion, to me, are more than just anti-racist concepts. They are core human values. And my strong suggestion is that you learn, adopt, and practice what's called leadership by values, leadership model. Third, keeping the peace. In over 20 years that I have lived here as a resident, our city has lived through its share of difficult controversies and deep divisions, sometimes turning into dishonesty, ugliness, and negativity. Differences of opinion should be welcome, but sooner or later, opposing sides need to come together to create win-win solutions versus win-lose, or worse yet, lose-lose. I believe council should and can remain neutral in these matters, but has a fundamental responsibility to step up and be the peacemakers who lead the peace process. I think it's a real opportunity and a need. Finally, before your strategic planning starts looking ahead, and I hope you start that in September, I hope you look back first and make an honest and fair assessment and evaluation of your performance against the 7 council goals from 4 years ago, 2018 and 19. And please share those with the rest of the community so we can see how you did. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dave. Do we have anyone online?
No.
All right. Does any member of the council, city attorney, city manager have new business? All right. Unfinished business. Councilmember Franklin, will you call for the 3rd reading of Bill 9191?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the 3rd and final reading of Bill number 9191 and subsequent adoption.
Second.
Neil, I assume I'm reading.
If you would, please.
Bill number 9191, 3rd reading, An ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending chapter 56 Architectural Review Board by revising section 56.050 permit applications submitted to the board, including the process for administrative approval and to clarify the review process.
Any questions, comments? All right, let's vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. All right, we're gonna move on to new business. Councilmember Bliss, will you call for the first and second reading of Bill 9194, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9194.
Second.
First reading, Bill number 9194, an ordinance levying the cost of abating certain nuisances, cut, trim, remove trash and debris, remove trees, dump fees, board up, etc., as a special tax bills against the properties hereinafter described and constituting levies as liens on the respective properties.
Is there any discussion?
All but two of these are owned by businesses or LLCs or some kind of corporation. I think we really need to look at, well, maybe a little bit more. I didn't see the next page. We really should be hammering these LLCs and businesses more so than individual property owners, I think. Let's increase their fees.
All right, let's save that for our revenue discussion, right? Hold it in there. All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 9194, an ordinance levying the cost of abating certain nuisances, cut, trim, remove trash and debris, remove trees, dump fees, board up, etc., as special tax bills against the properties herein described and constituting levies as liens on the respective properties.
Thank you. Councilmember Richardson, could you call for the first and second reading of Bill 9195, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9195.
Second.
First reading, Bill number 9195, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 8270 to remove the lot split approval for a new lot at 452 Foot Avenue and returning the property to one lot addressed at 446 Foot Avenue.
Do we have questions or concerns? All right, let's go for the second reading.
Second reading, Bill number 9195, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 8270 to remove the lot split approval for a new lot at 452 Foot Avenue and returning the property to one lot addressed at 446 Foot Avenue.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, could you call for the first and second reading of Bill 9196, please?
Yes, Mayor. I call for the reading of Bill number 9196.
Second.
First reading, Bill number 9196, an ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement between the city and NCW PCS MPL 27-year Sites Tower Holdings LLC and a settlement agreement between the city and CCATT LLC, Crown Castle International Corporation, New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, and NCWS PCS MPL 27-year Sites Tower Holdings LLC.
Is there any discussion other than crediting Eric with all those letters done so well? All right, then we'll have the second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 9196, an ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement between the city and NCW PCS MPL 27-year Sites Tower Holding LLC and a settlement agreement between the city and CCATT LLC, Crown Castle International Corporation, New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, and NCW PCS MPL 20-year 7 Sites Tower Holdings LLC.
I thought maybe I would have jinxed you, but congratulations. Well done.
Good.
So we will now move on to our presentation of flood information. Before Travis begins, would you like Dr. Peoples to talk about who was going to be here and what our status is there?
I would, thank you. So council, I was going to share during the work session update that unfortunately, Ms. Karen McHugh, our SEMA representative, has canceled on presenting with us this evening. She wasn't feeling well. So while that is
Would
disappointing.
you repeat that, please, a little closer to the microphone? I think some of our residents had a hard time hearing that.
Yes, our SEMA representative, Ms. Karen McHugh, is scheduled to present tonight, and unfortunately, she canceled late this afternoon. However, Mr. Ham has a lot of the flood information, so I believe the information that people came to hear and that council will need to consider will still be presented. Ms. McHugh, of course, did offer to reschedule, so we're looking at September 20th. I have not heard confirmation from her yet, but the information will still be timely. And as you all know, and as Mr. Ham will share, the flood information continues to evolve. So on the 20th, if she can come, it will still be appropriate, and hopefully will be even more new information at that time. So.
Mr. Ham, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn this over to you because
Sure.
I know you have quite a bit to share with us.
Sure. All right. So we are here trying to gauge interest in possible flood buyouts for substantially damaged homes. So we have 6 residential properties that were substantially damaged in the last flood. We've had 3 residents reach out about possible buyouts. I think a few of them are here tonight. We didn't want to move forward too far with it until we got a word from the council, whether or not that's something that would even be considered. So what we would be looking at, we would have to get appraisals on the homes. FEMA does do a 75% payout. We would pay 25%. We would pay a demo, we would pay closing costs. And then the properties would not be able to be used for any kind of development at all. Now, if you did in the future, I believe somebody talked about soccer goals, maybe on the ones by the parks, you can present a plan to SEMA and they'll look at it, but they didn't seem receptive really to anything. So basically we would get the properties, we would maintain them, we wouldn't be able to do anything with them.
Mr. Ham, if I may, Mayor.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so you all received the packet of information that Mr. Ham put together, and I thought we were going to be able to show it. And Katie, just kind of scroll through that. We can ask when Eric gets back.
Yes, Eric didn't think we were gonna do it, but.
Oh,
he'll be-
okay. I think it might be helpful if some of our audience wanted to see it, or even
Yep.
individuals online. But so there's a lot of information from FEMA. And so, and please correct me on any numbers I get wrong, but there are 6 homes that are eligible for buyout.
Can we talk, just stop right there and talk about what does this how do you define eligibility?
So St. Louis County sets the appraisal, what everybody's home is worth. So in a flood plain, if there's a flood event and then your home is damaged more than 50% of what county has set the structure value at, you're considered substantially damaged. Once you're substantially damaged, FEMA requires you to either elevate the home out of the floodplain, demolish the home, or relocate it on the property to get it out of the floodplain if that's an option. So that's what these 6 homes are. They all had various levels of damage beyond that 50%. The 3 that I've been in contact with were all 100% damaged. So then that's what you need at 50%.
Okay, so we had more than 6 homes that sustained some flood damage, right?
Correct. Correct.
So only those 6 are eligible. Can you, is it possible in a public hearing to share those addresses? If there's somebody out there wondering whether they're eligible, or do they need to call
So
plan department?
those individuals that have been deemed substantially damaged have been notified. That information has went to them.
Okay.
So people should not be wondering if. what
So,
they're
but if
damaged.
you didn't get a letter that says you're eligible based on substantial damage, then you're not eligible. I just want everyone to be clear where
Yes.
they stand.
Yes, and so Mr. Ham, and so we backed into this a little bit, but how many inspections has planning estimate? You don't have to give. But even on the day of flooding, so there's
28.
been numerous inspections that have done, and so 28 had some sort of damage, but
Correct.
those 6 rose to the level of buyout.
Okay.
And so they have been notified, and I thought we are trying to get them at it. And if you can't get that information out, Mr. Peterson, that's fine. So some of the information that Mr. Ham shared, and again, this is evolving, but the key is that FEMA, of those 6 that are eligible, will pay up to 75%. Not 75%, up to 75%. So some of the key information that council will need to consider, and as we get more information on how to move forward with appraisals, that number could be a moving target. It may be that FEMA pays 60%, 70%, but so it's up to that 75% threshold. The city then is required to pay that other portion that FEMA does not cover. So just so, and this is important because we were trying to put the budgetary number information together. So we've done a couple of different models just on a guesstimate of what FEMA might set that rate at. And then what Mr. Ham also shared that's not included in that guesstimate is that it also would be up to the city then to pay for the demolition of those properties. That's not included in that 25% buyout. In addition to that demolition, the city also would pay 100% of the closing cost on both the buyer and seller side. So those are some other factors that we need to consider as well. Councilman Franklin, you looked like you had a question.
What do we do with the land?
So that was the piece that Mr. Ham shared lightly. So it is floodplain land. There's nothing that the city can do with it. We're not able to redevelop, rebuild it. We had floated some ideas. We thought we could use it as a soccer field, for example. That was actually Mr. Davis's suggestion. Mr. Ham has been in contact, please stop me anytime, has been in contact with FEMA representatives. And while they didn't say no, they weren't overly enthusiastic about that type of suggestion.
So, I mean, so say we buy out these 6 properties. It's almost like a wall for the other damaged properties. It looks like, at least based off of this map that I'm looking at. So, I mean, would there be anything we would be able to do to help alleviate potential future flooding for those that are not quote unquote substantially damaged?
Mr. Ham, I'm going to ask you to.
In other words, can we do not build anything necessarily, but I'm just going to use a levee because that's the only thing I can think of. Could you build a levee in order to help alleviate some of the potential future flooding?
I mean, you could. The problem with building a levee is it shifts the problem downstream. So you'd have to build it in a way that you are not causing a problem down the road.
Can we shift it to Brentwood?
So we can try. It's actually what I was going to talk about. So Brentwood Bound is supposed to remove a lot of these properties from the floodplain,
Yeah.
allegedly. Right. So once that goes in, some of these may be out anyway. Now, what that does for the ones that we've, potentially could have purchased, I don't think those are coming out. I think it'll be the ones at the very edge of your maps. So, the orange up against the light yellow will come out. So the other ones, you'd have to either elevate the properties, build a levee, dig a big hole for the water to go into. I mean, there's endless possibilities. It's just a matter of money.
Can I ask those that were damaged during this rainstorm, have you been damaged before in past rainstorms? Nothing like this. So you've had minor flooding, so to speak, but
2008 and this year.
Sorry, if we could have people come to the podium so the folks on.
Yeah.
Could hear.
sorry, I was just,
So the question was about, well, you could hear the question. The answer was that this is more substantial flooding than you've had before. There's some concern that when there's work at Manchester and Hanley, then that also has made flooding worse. Was that a fair characterization of what people in the audience said? Yes, if you want to, you're going to have to come up and speak in the microphone, please. Thank you.
My house, which is on Coolman, it has flooded before up to the basement to the first floor. This time it went above the first floor.
Okay.
But
by
I've
that,
also had,
you
sorry,
mean inside the house or outside the house?
inside the house.
So you're flooding.
I
all-
lost everything. Yeah, all my furniture, everything is gone, but I've also had 2 other floods where it went up to about 4 feet in the basement. And that was due to MSD. And then they put a pump in there, or a grinder pump or whatever, and that helped, but it, didn't make it through this one. It made it through that second rain, but not this one. But I'm just wondering what MSD actually told me, that when they rerouted the sewers, that it ends at my house because I'm very low down, and that's just what I'm gonna get, so I'm sure that I'm gonna deal with this more, and it's just, I feel like MSD should be taking some responsibility. Even they have said that, that they screwed up,
So on the MSD issue, the city manager and I met with the executive director of MSD. We've invited them to come to a council meeting and talk with us about issues in our community. They have agreed to come. They have also agreed to do some kind of event in the community where people can speak one-on-one with MSD staff about their very specific issues, not about the broader issues.
Right.
So we are in discussion with MSD right now to try and get some of our residents' concerns addressed. And so we're going to get that done. I think we're inviting them hopefully for October. Am I correct?
We're aiming for either October 4th or I believe the October 18th meeting. I think those are the two dates. And if we can, the difficulty is, and MSD wants to be a partner was my sense and have a
Yes, I agree.
conversation with us. The difficulty is I certainly can't speak for them, but if we can be a conduit to have conversations beforehand, would certainly be happy to do that.
Yeah.
What street are you on? Did you say, ma'am?
Coolman. I'm on the corner of Coolman and Marshall. So mine was up here and, but the other houses have been flooded before too. This was the worst they flooded, but those same houses get flooded over and over again too.
Do you want to be bought out?
Yes, I'm ready. It's just, and when I did have flood insurance, I don't have it now. When I did have flood insurance, they didn't cover any contents or it wasn't worth having. They covered very little, and to have to pay that much flood insurance and have insurance not cover it, it's just, it doesn't seem right, but.
All right. Thank you
for
very
coming.
much.
Appreciate it.
So we've talked 6 properties, closing costs, demolition costs, so forth. Do we have a ballpark number for what this would be at this point?
So if we just pay the 25%, we're looking at 381,000 without demo, without closing costs. So you figure 10 to 15,000 each for demo, closing costs anywhere from 1 to 3,000 each. So
Yeah, I can't do the math that quickly,
mean,
but
probably right around-
will you get us an estimate?
right around 500,000.
Okay.
Probably.
So say we demolish these 6 houses, do we know of what the repercussions or the impact are onto the surrounding properties without a house there, without property there? Like, are we gonna exacerbate any issues?
I don't know. I think it'll make the flooding better, not in an event like we just had, but I think regular rains, because there'll be more ground for everything to soak into. So I think flooding wise, it'll probably be better. I mean, if we get another 500-year rain, is what it is. So.
Are any of the other substantially damaged property owners here? Do you guys want to be bought out?
Well, it looks like all 6 are here then.
Can you come up?
Yeah, you need to come to the microphone, please.
And if you can state your names too, that'd be helpful.
Name's David Perez. We had to buy floodplain insurance to even buy the house, but it didn't cover anything because of the rain. Like our initial problem was the sewer spitting out. Like I have a video on my phone still of the poop water literally shooting out of the pipe in my basement. And it filled up my basement to a certain point to where I think it was the pressure from the outside rain. It broke the windows. And because of that, the flood insurance didn't do anything. Like it didn't cover anything. Home insurance didn't cover anything. So we lost washer, dryer, mini fridge, like everything downstairs was gone. The insurance did not do anything at all. I'm sorry, it replaced our AC, furnace, the general stuff, but that was it.
So you had home insurance plus flood insurance, and home insurance covered this incident?
No.
What you talked about was covered, came from flood insurance.
Yeah, it covered the major appliances, yes, but like what was the term they used?
Double causation.
It was concurrent causation. Basically, if the windows wouldn't have broke and let the rainwater in, then we would have been covered, we would have been fine. But because there was so much rain, because of it, one stacked on top of the other, it was a loophole for them, basically. And so we are just SOL. And as far as like the, you said the properties have been informed. All the letter says is substantial damage. It doesn't say anything about percentage. It doesn't say anything about potential buyout or, anything like that. All it says is substantial damage.
Thank you for that clarification. So part of it, and I want to make sure that everybody understands, and believe me, this is tough. My heart goes out to everybody. So FEMA still has not told us what that percentage is, which is why it's not in your letter. We don't know. What we're hearing is up to 75%. And so we're trying to be very careful in terms of what we state because we don't know it. We continue to work with them to hear that. And it may be that it is just up to that 75%. And if I say this wrong, Mr. Ham, and that it's a different value for each home. It might just depend on what those appraisals come back, what FEMA says. So we may not be able to give that flat type of information. So we continue to have those conversations.
So if the city wants to pursue the buyout option, we need to do a notice of interest for each property and get that to SEMA by September 23rd. That's not an application. That's not, any kind of a contract or agreement. That's just, we send that to SEMA. Once they get them in, I'm assuming on the 24th, they'll go through them. They'll pick out the ones that they want to build an application with, and they'll let those folks know. So we could even turn them in and they're not accepted.
So are we talking about, which of the programs are we talking about here when we're talking about submitting to SEMA? Because as I was reading through the material you provided to us, there's at least 2, if not 3 different programs. Hazard mitigation grant program, the flood mitigation assistance, and then there's one that I know that I also read about that I didn't write down. What are we talking about here?
So the hazard mitigation grant program is for if you don't have flood insurance.
Okay.
It's there to help you out. The flood assistance is if you do have flood insurance. I believe that's the one we would fill out for those folks. But those are the 2.
And so the flood mitigation assistance had this criteria that talked about, repetitive loss, that kind of thing. And it seemed to me that at least my notes tell me that severe repetitive loss, that the possibility was 100% FEMA coverage. Is that really true, or am I?
So SEMA checked, and they don't have any severe repetitive loss properties in Webster Groves.
Okay.
So
Do we have any repetitive loss properties?
they didn't check on those. I think they would have told me if they did.
Because that's the
but-
90-10 split. The split gets better that way.
Right, but they're only going to have those if there was an NFIP claim, basically a flood insurance claim. So if they put in a claim to FEMA, or if they've asked for grants in the past, they'll have a record of that. If they haven't, FEMA is not going to know.
It's not eligible. Okay, thank you.
So if we submit by September 23rd, it's not us committing that we will buy out these properties. It's merely just going through the
Right.
prerequisites in order for us to buy out if we would like to eventually. Is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
But it may not be up to us also, is what you're saying?
That's correct as well. SEMA will go through the applications if they feel like that is a good use of their money, for lack of a better term, but better way to say it. Then they'll pick those out. They'll contact those. They'll contact us. We'll work with the residents to get the information we need. Send that all back to SEMA. They send it up to FEMA. FEMA makes the final determination.
Do we know what their criteria, like how we could, I don't want to say like stack it in our favor, but like, is there a way to kind of go down the list of, of criteria? Okay.
Sorry, you said no repetitive loss? My name is Linda Hobson.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Yeah, I had a flood in 2008 and this one. So that's twice. And I asked for a buyout then, and I have a letter saying they couldn't because it's just one. So now that's 2. There you go.
Unfortunately, I think if I might, again, my notes are correct, and hopefully Travis, you'll know, you said 2008.
Yeah.
It's within a 10-year period with the repetition. According to the federal law. Am I wrong about that? I hope I'm wrong about that.
I can check.
Would you please check that? Because unfortunately, it may just be the way the law is written. It's too far apart for those.
Right. And I can, like I said.
I
can
know, you
check.
can roll your eyes and you should roll your eyes, and I totally agree with you rolling your eyes.
Right, but I mean, I very specifically asked the SEMA mitigation person, and they said, no, we have no repetitive losses in Webster Groves. So it could be that it's been too long.
There is a time period. And so again, as you said, we may disagree with it, but it does not fit. And I know as a homeowner, it doesn't feel like that is accurate, but it does not fit the state and federal rules. We will go through that period. I think you called it prerequisites, Councilman Franklin. So it is our intent to go ahead and submit that letter of interest, do the paperwork, because there's no loss in doing that. We will get all of that stuff done, get it submitted, but then there's still the decision points that are SEMA's, not necessarily ours to influence. And then, as we've already shared, more information forthcoming from FEMA. Tonight was not meant to have the final decisions on the buyouts. We needed council to be able to have the financial information and to share the information that we had up to this point. As I said, we will move forward with that information. So certainly if there's more questions for Mr. Ham, and I know that if, I'm sorry, ladies. Yeah.
Are there other questions right now? I guess we've let some people do it already, so come on down.
Hi, my name's Abby DeShane. I live at 839 North Forest, or I did until July 26th. Like David, I had to buy flood insurance in order to get a mortgage. The past 7 weeks have been a nightmare between what I hear from Mr. Ham, what I hear from FEMA, and the just horrible experience with flood insurance. It's been a nightmare. I had purchased some additional flood insurance, and that got me $18,000 for everything I've ever owned. Okay. What I'm surprised by is the idea that this property becomes useless. It's a beautiful park. I've lived there almost 5 years, and every day dozens of people walk down there because it's gorgeous. It's a cul-de-sac. People drive down it just to look at it. There's already a small ballpark there. There was up that steep hill that the sledders are so popular. There was a playground up there that has never been replaced.
It will be shortly.
And, but just the fact, the idea that it is worthless when it's so, I mean, look at Eureka. Eureka High School sits on a creek. Their ball fields get flooded when it happens. It didn't stop them from building the ball fields. It's just kind of a given. That's what you do with floodplains. You make them into something that can be enjoyed the other 363 days of the year. I mean, all with this talk, Greenway, the Greenway path goes right through there. Has anybody talked to them about expanding services or expanding facilities or having something there? Now, I'm not, I told Mayor Arnold when she walked down the third day after the flood, I don't want to see anybody build anything down there. But if we don't get this buyout, we will sell to people who will build down there again.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just say, I appreciate you guys all being here, and I have no doubt that if we were to go forward with the buyout, that we would figure out what to do with this land. I think the more pressing question is there anything more that you think that we as a city should be doing in order to assist you through this? This is going to be a long process, it sounds like, and it's going to be a very difficult process. And I can only imagine that difficulty is compounded by the fact that your house and your home and your life is already ruined. And so I say that knowing that I'm not going through that. But is there anything more that this city can be doing that you think that we should be doing in order to ensure that this that we try to ameliorate any problems that you guys are experiencing currently?
Well, I know that one thing that my flood insurance is insisting that I rebuild and remediate and restore my house, or they're not going to give me the kind of money that, they'll give me 6 figures to fix up my house, but they won't give me hardly anything, thanks to what that FEMA evaluator machine is. They won't give me anything. So, I was going somewhere with this. The point is, everything, I want to know what Webster expects of me. What do you expect me to do? I can only pay rent and mortgage for a very short amount of time. I have to move on with my life. And I honestly don't know what to do. I'm in fear of hiring a contractor. I've heard what Mark the code guy is like here in Webster, and it's horrid. And I don't want to deal with that person ever. And I just don't know what's the best thing to do. What's the right thing to do? I mean, I'm ready to call a flipper. A flipper gives me a check tomorrow for everything. I'm going to take it. And then you can deal with the property that gets built. But I think this is an opportunity for Webster. Just a great opportunity. I know you'll get feedback from people who don't want to see their tax dollars spent on a bunch of poor properties that stupid people bought. Well, that's a part of Webster, and it's a beautiful corner of Webster, and we've paid our taxes, and Linda's lived there for over 30 years. We deserve something and a little help, along the way, just to make sure that if I'm forced to rebuild, I don't live in fear of what code ordinance is going to come up that's going to require me to lift my house 20 inches beyond what FEMA asks. That's what I need from Webster.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So, this is our initial informational thing. One of the things that we clearly, and I do think, and I think it's fair to say to those of you here, and there's not one of us who doesn't wish we could instantly snap our fingers and just buy you all out. Question is, we still don't know what that costs. We still don't know where exactly that money would come from for us. And so we can't give you a quick answer on this, unfortunately. I wish we could. But we're going to continue to work through this and try and figure out what options are available. We haven't brought up, in addition, and I probably shouldn't bring this up, but I will anyway. Why not? It's only recorded for the world to hear. We are also doing some investigation into what impact Brentwood Bound had, if any, on this, because, we need to know whether that had no effect, made it worse temporarily, or what that is. The other thing is MSD is going to talk to us about some of their ongoing projects as well that they believe might make a difference, at least a marginal difference in some of these things. So I guess what I'm saying is we've got a lot of unknowns. We have very many fewer than you all do, and I'm sorry about that. And we're working through this process, but we're not going to get it done quickly, I'm afraid. So, and I'm sorry for that. Does anybody else have a comment? Any other questions of Travis? Is there anything? 1 second. Travis, is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sister,
Mhm.
helping her, and as you can imagine, she didn't prepare for this. Nobody expects their whole house and everything they own to be washed away. So I understand what she's been going through, and I stepped in to kind of help, and I appreciate the emails. I've been trying to take some of the burden off her. So, because she still has to work. She still has to meet FEMA every time they call and want to come inspect her house. She still has to, maintain life, take care of family, and deal with losing everything she owns. So these people here and her are going through a lot. And I was just wondering, is there a way that Webster could communicate with everyone, keep an open line of communication to these 6 homeowners, so that not all of us have to be emailing constantly? Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? Is there any way to keep the communication open?
Thank you for that. And I don't know if you want to comment on that. We had a conversation about that very thing today.
Thank you. And I appreciated your emails and the correspondence back and forth. And I do understand it feels like a real slow drip of information. So we are doing the best we can. And I know that's still not good enough. And I understand that. So we can work out a way to communicate the new information that we receive, but to a degree, each of your information is going to be different based on what we learned from FEMA. So, but yes, the short answer is we can certainly work on that. And, you know, I also want to share, and again, I know how frustrating some of the information is. Our inspectors are top notch. The rules and the codes, and believe me, I have been through them myself, and it is frustrating. They are the rules that we are handed from SEMA and FEMA. We're not intending to make it difficult. I think each of our inspectors are incredibly professional, and they're also community members. They're also going through flooding events. So I would like to thank Mr. Ham, Planning and Development Department, everybody that's been working. And again, we will do our best to communicate information. So what we'll do, and I think you have everybody's email addresses. Okay. So what we can do is we can start initial, just kind of a group email and a check-in as we get information, and then just know that there will be some personalized information that you're going to have to communicate. So thank you.
Anything else?
No, no.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you all for being here
Yes.
as well. I totally have lost track of where we are on the agenda, so let me find my agenda here.
Consent agenda.
Yes.
All right. We are to the approval of the consent agenda. I would like to make one, might seem unrelated, but it's totally related to our previous conversation, comment about a couple of things in the consent agenda. And that is that we're going to purchase our first electric vehicles and have an electric charging station. You know, one of the things we all know about this flooding is it's unprecedented. And we as a community have to take responsibility for what we do in terms of our environmental stewardship. And this is a step in that direction. So having said that, even though I'm really not supposed to talk about the consent agenda, would you like to call for the approval of the consent agenda?
Sure. Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yeah.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right. We have appointments to boards and commissions. And that would be Philip Mitchell as the alternate member of the Traffic Advisory Commission, and Dottie Englis as the member of the Arts Commission, and reappointing Beth Corelli to serve on the Arts Commission. We did not do in our work session issues and updates. How about if we hang on to those unless someone has something pressing for us to deal with here? Anyone have anything pressing? I've got some stuff, but I'll send you all an email. Maybe the one I should announce publicly, because it's important that people know, is that I did send a letter to the mayor of Shrewsbury as well as the mayor of Rock Hill, inviting them to talk about a collaboration in rebuilding the Webster Pool to see if those two communities would like to join us. And so that invitation has been extended. We'll follow up and put that meeting together. I think that's my only really important one. All right, so we do need to have a closed session, and we are having a closed session. I know it's number 1, attorney-client privilege communications. What else do we have, Neil? Thank you all.
Thank you all. Item 3.
1 and
Number
3.
3.
1 and 3.
Yes, 1 and 3 is what I understood.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for executive closed session on item number 1, attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens, 1, close parens, and item number 3, personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens, 3, close parens.
Got a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. I can't say it, but I'm asking for it.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.